KLAATU Barada Peanut Popcorn Puddle. God, it's a P word. It's definitely a P word. KLAATU Barada. Okay, then that's it.
That was very good, Griffin.
I didn't say it. You see what was funny?
I know.
The bit is not saying the one word I'm supposed to say. Did you get it?
Do that. I would do that though too. Do you know what I mean? I'd forget.
Oh, you identify with him in that moment.
I'd forget the word. I know immediately. I would. I wouldn't write it down, and then in the moment when I have to say the fucking phrase, I'd fuck it up.
I think that's what I relate to the most is the confidence of like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, of course.
I got it. 3 words, I got it. David, do you think you would have remembered?
I would have remembered it because it's KLAATU Barada Nikto. That's the only... Have I ever told you the day the Earth stood still story? It's not a really exciting story, which is probably
No, is this a story about what you were doing on the day the Earth stood still?
No, luckily that day hasn't happened yet. My mom is not a genre film fan in particular, right? Like
she has only seen one Star Wars movie in her life, and it was two. I'm sorry.
She's seen 2. She's seen Revenge of the Sith when we did a commentary live,
right?
And she saw Force Awakens
at the Ziegfeld.
Yeah, well, I can't remember, but like she was like, I got to see that just because everyone's talking about it, and so we saw The Force Awakens. But no, not a genre film person.
Okay.
You know, if she's showing me a classic movie when I'm a kid, she's showing me comedies. Sure. You know, she's showing me other stuff. But then she would always be like, God, there's this one movie I love that I saw when I was a kid. And like, and then one day the NFT in Britain was doing, don't you do the bet, was doing The Day the Earth Stood Still.
NFT?
Right?
That's I'm too distracted by that to go for the
I know.
usual.
It's called the BFI now. It used to be called the NFT, the National Film Theater. I know.
Beyond fungible items?
Right. And she's like, that's the movie. Let's go see it. This is like the sci-fi movie I love. So we went and saw it. I think I liked it a lot. I think and we walked out and she was like, well, that's not the movie I was thinking of. That was pretty good. But that wasn't it. And then later we finally figured out that she actually meant the movie The Day the Earth Caught Fire, which is another British sci-fi movie that is also great. That is also, it's the reason she liked it. It's actually a newspaper movie. Like it's about people working at a London newspaper when the Earth, the sun does something insane or what, I can't remember what it is.
It's a Daily Express movie. Yeah. No, Day the Earth Stood Still is one of the only sci-fi movies I remember my mother speaking highly of when I was a child.
It was a classy horror movie. I mean, sci-fi movie, sorry.
She liked that, and she liked all the versions of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but I think the original one as well. Like those are the 2 concepts that caught on. It is funny that it's like famous phrase from that movie, right? Then the Evil Dead franchise riffs on it substantially, and then Star Wars does as well. There are like the 3 skiff aliens. When they're on the skiff and Han is like fighting off Boba Fett, I think the 3 aliens are named KLAATU, Barada, and Nikto, or at least that's their species names.
Yeah, well, it's sort of
it's just clearly a movie and a series of words that made an impression on a lot of people who watched it when they were young and then went on to make films of their own.
Right, it's the movie came out of or whatever. Yes, you are correct. Anyway, our guest can talk anytime. By the way,
anytime.
It's totally if you want to burst right in, that's totally fine.
I've never seen it.
Never seen The Day the Earth Stood Still?
No, I know what it is, but I just never seen it.
Gort? You're not a Gort fan?
Gort?
Guess not.
Gort's the big robot.
Gort.
Oh, man.
And then in the remake, Gort's like a nano thing, right? He's like nanotechnology. Every fucking 2000s remake, that was what they came up with.
Can it be a cloud or can it be a lot of little things?
Turns
I'm going to name
bugs.
my son Gort.
Sure, do it. Gort Hosley.
You've already said that you want to name your son Droopy McCool. That was I think the first time on the podcast that you've invoked a future name for your child. You're in a very serious relationship. Have you discussed at any point in time, like, I know it's a big conversation to have, but like, I just want you to know if we're ever going to have children, their names are going to be Droopy McCool Hosley and Gort Hosley.
I'm waiting for the right moment.
Cool.
I haven't sprung it on her yet, but
cool.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll go over great.
Did you guess Eva? Jeez, I can just say your name. We don't have a rule where I can't say your name.
No,
did you see the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still with Keanu Reeves? Did you see it?
No, I've never seen any of The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Wow.
Is it the remake anything?
The remake is not much.
Okay.
I mean,
Bizarrely,
it's okay.
It feels like it should be a little better than it is, right?
Yeah. Keanu is well cast in that KLAATU, who he's playing, is sort of supposed to be kind of robotic and weird.
Jennifer Connelly and John Hamm and Jaden Smith.
It was early Hamm in movies. It was like we're on like season 2 of Mad Men, and it was like, why isn't this guy in every movie? And so when he showed up, you're like, hey, it's Hamm.
I've heard of Hamm on Rye, but Hamm in movies?
Okay.
No, I've heard of one and I hadn't heard of the other. I'm not trying to make a joke. I just genuinely I've heard of one thing.
Is great. And truly, you look, it's like this cartoon kind of animated living room. It's like almost like SpongeBob SquarePants' like living room. It's got that vibe.
It's the Evil Dead cabin, Ben.
Oh,
it's the cabin.
Okay.
Because it was an escape room I did over Zoom during lockdown that was an Evil Dead themed escape room that was being run out of the Chaz in Seattle.
Did you successfully escape?
Yes. And then, yes. And they even had a Bruce Campbell like impersonator that you'd have to interact with on a little, it was great. It was like, there's different ways people did escape rooms over Zoom, but this one was just that there was a guy running around with a camera in the escape room going like, what should I do? What do you want me to do? And you just kind of yell at him like, go over to the mirror. And he'd be like, okay. And he was kind of playing this like hick goofball character. So he was just like, I just came in this cabin from outside. He had overalls and stuff.
But he was like Larry Middleman from Arrested Development, where it's like he's just wearing a camera and you're sort of like living vicariously through him.
Yeah. He'd be like, go back to the lock. Yeah, try this. He'd be like, okay.
That's fun.
That it does sound fun. It also sounds like trying to play a video game with 5 people, though, right? Where you're all like shouting different instructions or something. I don't know. It might frustrate me.
I did it exactly one time. And then I was like, well, I've done that activity the way it shouldn't be done. And
should we go back to the fact that saying the words SpongeBob SquarePants seemed to give Ben a nervous breakdown? Or should we just
I don't know what happened to me. It I couldn't speak. I'm really sorry about that. It hit a spot that I think in my brain is maybe like there's just like it registered SpongeBob SquarePants, and then somewhere that like that chain got broken, and it just it really it's just spun out. Wow.
I don't want to force your hand, but maybe your third son should be named SpongeBob Hosley.
Ben, was it like when you're like about to say someone's name to their face who you've known for years, and then your brain's like, that's not their name.
Short circuited or whatever.
And it is their name though, but then you like swallow their name because you're about to just say you just panic because that happens to me.
Yeah, well, I think it's just the nature of the name being kind of words just jammed together, and it just didn't sound like I was like, am I saying gibberish right now? But then we got there, and we're exploring it, and I love that.
Ben, you're showing your ignorance. SpongeBob SquarePants is a traditional Nordic name. It is not just words smushed together, okay? Check your ignorance. This is an educational podcast in which we check our privilege and our ignorance. It's called Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
And it's about filmographies. Directors who have massive success early on in their careers are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby. And this is a miniseries on the films of Sam Raimi. It's called Podcast Me to Hell. Today we are talking about Army of Darkness, the third film in his Evil Dead trilogy, and the second film in his early 90s Universal Dark in the Title duology.
I guess so.
It is funny that he makes like Evil Dead 2, Dark Man, Army of Darkness.
I do think it's bizarre that this movie is not called Medieval Dead, right? Like,
oh, so good.
Like, I know that was the original idea way back when they wanted Evil Dead 2 to be set in the past.
Right.
and then I guess they dropped it, and Army of Darkness was some title they came up with that they then dropped and added Dead by Dawn to Evil Dead 2 instead. And then but like, why isn't this called Medieval Dead? Don't you think this would have made $10 million more? Like if it was called Medieval Dead?
Yeah, my memory of it was that because it was like new rights holders, Universal making this one, then they didn't make the previous films. They were like, we want this to stand on its own. We want this to be an entry point. We don't want people to feel like they're jumping into the third movie. Yeah, but it's a better title.
Yeah, it's a better title. Yeah, we're here to talk Army of Darkness. A movie that I feel like, I don't know about you guys. I didn't watch for years because I, as a teenager, thought this movie's reputation was straight up bad. Like that was my like, I think I watched Evil Dead's 1 and 2, and I had somehow absorbed like Army of Darkness, not worth it. Like it's a Godfather 3 situation. Don't even bother. Like they messed it up. Like I must have read something somewhere that said this at some point. So it took me years to see Army of Darkness. Yeah.
David, I had the exact same thing, but for Evil Dead 1.
Oh, where it was like, don't even, they hadn't figured it out yet. Like
the second one's so much better. Yeah.
It's not fun. It's just gross. It's just scary. But I watched Army of Darkness like hundreds of times as a teenager.
Well, that's why you're here.
That's really nice. It's very, 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 very kind of you to say that. I am overwhelmed.
You are a classic. Anytime Eva Anderson is in my, like the episode pops up, some new show, and it's with Eva Anderson, I'm like, oh, okay, well, appointment. We're stopping the current episode of whatever I'm listening to listen to this. That's the Eva Anderson touch. It's true.
Aw.
Sorry, look, I didn't mean to yell.
And the bias here might be that David and I both love podcasts that are hosted by people you're good friends with that have you on a lot. But I do think there is a consistency to any time you're a guest in terms of your passion, but also the preparation you put into everything. You go very deep on whatever subject you're talking about. And there, I mean, I'll say two things. One, I was at a hotel a couple years ago, I guess, and they sort of had their like selection of books like in the lobby that are mostly, I guess, just sort of like interior design, but ostensibly you could read if you just are trying to chill out in the lobby of a hotel. And they had a volume of the Fantagraphics Dick Tracy collection, and I got so amped for a moment that it was the one volume which you've talked about on Podcast The Ride being out of print and costing thousands of dollars, which features the Moon Maid arc. And I had to explain to the person I was dating at the time the arc of me going, holy shit, is that? And then taking this Dick Tracy book off a wall in a hotel lobby and like flipping through it frantically and then being crestfallen. And she was like, what just happened internally? And the whole time in my head, I was running, if this is it, do I take it?
Do you steal it?
Yeah.
That's so cool. Do you want to hear something interesting about that mysterious Moon Maid comic? My brother Dashel, shout out to Dash, fan of the pod. He found me the missing Dick Tracy. He found it like a guy in Australia had bought a bunch of them. And so he sent it to me for my birthday, but then it didn't arrive. So he emailed the guy. So the guy ended up sending it again. So now I have 2 copies of the missing Dick Tracy.
Wow.
Dick Tracy, I still read Dick Tracy, the daily 3-panel comic.
You do? Cool.
Of course you do.
Right.
Of course you do.
I love that.
Cup of coffee and your dick in the morning.
Griff, it's funny you say that. It just introduced a new villain called Coffee Head, whose head looks like a cup of coffee.
What?
Or it doesn't
wait.
His head looks like a mug, I guess is the better way to put it. Here, I will.
But is there coffee inside of it?
No, he's just, that's the whole thing with Dick Tracy. They don't think that hard. It's just like a guy's head will look like a screw, and they're like, his name's Screwhead, like that's sort of.
Shouldn't it be Mughead? How do you know it's coffee?
It says they call me Coffee Head. Now it's coffee with a Y. Well, I don't know. Okay. Maybe to just kind of. Let me see if I can.
Does he have 2? Does he have one big ear?
I'm looking at pictures here. It looks like both ears are handle shaped.
But he's
right,
in
Eva.
profile.
It should be one tiny ear.
Okay.
Sure. I guess they're playing the angles on it.
So he's like a sippy cup. He should be called Sippy Cup Head.
He looks like a fucking sippy cup. They should give him the little like Tintin flip at the front of his hair, so it looks like the little nozzle of the sippy cup. And he's got two big.
I'm putting it
ears.
in the chat. There
Okay.
it is. You can click
Sippy
on
cup.
it now. They call me Coffee Head.
Wow.
And the idea of this villain is that he used to own a coffee shop, I guess. He's a coffee.
Okay.
He's sort of like, in Mulholland Drive. When Badalamenti, the composer, he plays like the mobster who drinks the coffee and spits it out, right? The mobster who cares that much about a good espresso.
Sure.
He's attractive.
You're into Coffee Head?
He's one of the more handsome Dick Tracy villains,
he's way
right?
hotter than I thought he would be.
Is it
he's
because, Eva, do you like a square jaw? Because this guy's got like a set square jaw.
He does, but he also has kind of tortured, dreamy eyes.
Yeah, he's got a frown. Yeah,
like full kissable lips.
I was gonna say the lips are really because every other Dick Tracy villain looks really unfortunate. Am I allowed to say this?
Yeah, that's not a hate crime to say Dick Tracy villains are ugly.
Am I kink shaming by saying that Dick Tracy villains are by and large very ugly?
They're not the handsomest bunch. I mean, it's sort of I suppose it's a retrograde problem with Dick Tracy where you can judge a book by its cover in Dick Tracy, right?
Yes.
Like that's pretty much the idea.
Training children to hate the ugly.
Right, exactly.
Is Karen Hahn going to send me a bunch of angry texts telling me that she has a crush on The Influence?
On Flat Top. I mean, but you're right. It's not just it's double whammy. It's children should not trust unattractive people, and they should focus on whatever their weird facial flaw is and say that's their name or whatever, right?
It's their defining characteristic. It usurps every other aspect of their personality.
I love the film Dick Tracy. I love the Beatty movie. I think it's so cool and weird.
To be clear, not the movie we're talking about today. A movie we will inevitably cover.
I wanted to that movie came out in 1990, right? This is 92. Raimi's probably too small for it, but like you can imagine a Raimi Dick Tracy around. Like Darkman's got a lot of Dick Tracy going on. Like he would have made the man was sort of making living cartoons at the time, right? Like he could have made a Dick Tracy.
Well, yes, and the weird arc of this movie is, of course, like they want to do this premise for Evil Dead 2. They're like, that sounds too nerdy. He really wants to direct The Shadow, which we talk about in the previous episode, I assume. He really wants to make The Shadow. He doesn't get the job. He makes Darkman as sort of his angry, like, not breakup movie, but his rejection movie of like, I want to show you what I could have done with this sort of pulpy noir film, which was that whole post-Batman trend of everyone going, they don't want more superheroes, they want more like two-fisted comic strip heroes.
Right, they want 30s radio drama energy right now.
The Phantom was around them too, right? Phantom. With Billy Zane.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like weirdly, Darkman is one of the more successful of that wave by being spiritually in line with that, but not literally being an adaptation of anything, and also being present day rather than like full pastiche.
The Phantom movie, of course, right? That's the famous situation where they were like, we played it straight. And the guy who wrote it was like, wait, what? I wrote that as a comedy. What are you guys talking about?
It was Joe Dante. Joe Dante was going to make it as a comedy, and then they fired him, took his same script, and played it straight.
Right.
Everyone except Treat Williams, who, if you've seen that movie, knows exactly what's going on.
He is
Xander
really
Drax
good
is a funny villain. But Billy Zane is not.
Poor Billy Zane. Because if you feel bad for Billy Zane in that movie. But Treat Williams, if you guys don't know, one of the best Twitter accounts out there.
Really?
Oh my God.
Oh man, I gotta check it out.
The most sincere dad tweets of all, like just like absolutely straight faced. I mean, you might have to turn off retweets because it's a lot of like sincere retweeting as well. But my brother just sends me great Treat content all the time. We used to both be big Everwood fans, so we've always loved Treat.
He's awesome.
That makes a tremendous amount of sense. It is funny though that like Dick Tracy was supposed to be like the new Batman, right? And then you have Rocketeer, you have Shadow, you have Phantom. I guess Phantom's like kind of the last in that run. That's 96. By the time this movie comes out, pretty much that trend had like largely petered out. But there's a scenario in which I imagine the Sam Raimi Dick Tracy would have been more successful than the Beatty Dick Tracy, because Raimi probably just would have leaned fully into the goofiness, whereas at the time I think people were very confused by the tone of the Beatty Dick Tracy and the weird mashup of like the cartooniness and his weird prestige-y, serious-minded sensibilities.
Yeah, it's almost like in retrospect insane how serious Dick Tracy takes itself.
So serious with that visual aesthetic.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what makes the movie fascinating.
Right. It's why it's interesting. Right. If it was art,
right,
it would probably be less interesting. But
I think you're right that like Sam Raimi could have made that same movie with that cast and that script, and it probably would have been more popular with children.
But imagine Bruce Campbell as Dick Tracy for a second.
He'd be good.
He'd be so good.
He'd be so fucking good.
Not that Warren doesn't crush it in that yellow suit. I mean, he looks great. Like, he's a hot guy. But Bruce Campbell looks like he was drawn with ink. You know, that's his whole thing.
He has the actual chin of Dick Tracy.
Yes,
he actually
the profile. And Beatty was old at that time. But yes, weirdly, Darkman being successful lets Raimi do kind of his first like check cash in, which is, you're going to let me go back and do the third movie in a trilogy that you don't own the previous two films to. And my buddy is going to be the star, because that's the other thing, is that Darkman had been written for Campbell. And then Campbell was like, I'm going to step aside because my buddy Sam's about to torpedo his career.
Right. He has to stop insisting on me as the lead of all of his movies.
Right. It's a kind of a sweet story where Campbell is just like, I knew I was going to be okay, but I knew Sam had a bigger career in front of him. And if he insisted that I always had to be his leading man, it was going to get hamstrung. So then this is sort of this weird, like, cashing in the Darkman check. Darkman, which does well theatrically, but does like way better on video, kind of explodes immediately once it hits video, leads to the direct-to-video sequels. He's able to go back and go, you're going to let me make this movie with my buddy.
Now picture Bruce Campbell as Oscar Schindler, because that's another thing we could have ended up with, right?
It's another thing we could have ended up with.
I could have done more. I wish I could do Bruce Campbell. I also could only think of one Oscar Schindler quote. You know, he would have been good as early Oscar Schindler in the first hour of Schindler's List, when he's a party animal, when he's just going to bars, he's smoking, he's hanging out with ladies, you know, fun Oscar Schindler.
Do you think that Embeth Davidtz and Liam Neeson talked about Sam Raimi on the set of Schindler's List when they had their like?
They must
have.
That's
a fair question.
Oh, you too?
Probably.
Like you also?
It's just such a funny thing to think about, right? Because this ended up coming out after Schindler, but was shot first. Is that correct?
I think it's the next thing she does.
It came out before Schindler's List. This came out in February of 1993. And Schindler's List came out in December of 93.
Okay. I just know it was shot a lot earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
This was weirdly delayed. Yeah.
And Embeth Davidtz, Army of Darkness is her first screen credit, I think, and Schindler's List is her second. It was kind of out of the gate for her.
Well, she had done South African movies.
I guess you're right. It's her first Hollywood screen credit. There's a couple of South African
Hollywood
movies.
Yeah.
You're right. I love Embeth Davidtz. Well, I always love to see her.
Good.
Always good.
Shows
She's always good.
She's
absolutely.
When she showed up in Old, I was so happy.
Same. And I even had that excitement of going like, oh fuck, is that Embeth Davidtz?
Yeah.
Like it was like a final surprise under the Christmas tree.
Oh man, she was locking down like a very awkward storyline on the Apple morning show. She was Steve Carell's unfortunate ex-wife.
I need to watch the morning show. Every time anyone describes it to me, it just sounds bananas. It just sounds like something they're getting away with over there and putting it out. They're like, okay, yeah, more. You know, it's weird.
It's crazy.
It's interesting though, because like she doesn't work a tremendous amount. It feels like she's somewhat selective in what she chooses to do. And then I was looking at her Wikipedia, and there were like 4 or 5 performances in big movies where I'm like, I forgot she was in that, and she's great in that. Like, I forgot that she's Lane Price's wife on Mad Men.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's good in that.
I forgot how good she is in Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
She's really good in that. Did you remember that she is Peter Parker's mother in the Amazing Spider-Man films? The mystery of his parents.
I wasn't going to mention that. That's not her fault.
No, it's not her
that
fault
is a weird
at all.
waste of her.
Miss Honey. She's Miss Honey.
She is.
She's Miss Honey.
I don't want to go too crazy over here, but she is such a babe in Matilda. It's crazy.
That feels like maybe the ultimate David formative crush.
I wasn't the ultimate one, but she's a total babe. She's got those round glasses, remember?
Yeah. But also, she's like amazing in Junebug.
Oh, yeah.
She's always good. And it is just so funny to have her 1993 be this and Schindler's List. And that's her entree into Hollywood.
Literally, Princess Sheila and then Schindler's List. A princess named Sheila.
Yeah. And she spends half of this movie being like a deadite temptress.
Or just getting manhandled by Ash.
But, it is funny that she's like, you think of Miss Honey, you think of this, like she's more of the sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like she turned into the scary type A English lady. Like, not that that's always what she does, but I feel like that's what she's typecast as, like more sort of icy. And in these early movies, she's not that at all. She's like sexy and fun and cool. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure why that is how that goes. It's just because she's English, maybe. I don't know.
She's like a naif or something. It's very odd how strongly her type changed, but she's good at both. I just rewatching this movie, every single minute, at least once a minute, I would think to myself, I can't believe they let them make this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is just such an ultimate where you're like, they got studio money to make this. Like, the whole movie feels like an in-joke in a bizarre way. And that the joke is, can you believe... Like, you're watching someone get a big budget to do a student film. It's like, this is the movie we make in the backyard with our friends. And now we have like animatronics, and Evil Dead 2 feels like the absolute height of the size you could imagine someone would get for that kind of goof. And then this just like blows that up.
Yeah. There's lines Ash has that are so aggressively stupid on purpose that I was like just picturing like Sam Raimi giggling, writing them down. Like I was like, I felt like everyone just was like, yeah, like Ash is dumb now and he's an asshole. That's what Ash has been gone for a while now. Ash sucks now and he's awesome.
It's funny because like the through line of these movies is obviously Sam Raimi loves torturing Bruce Campbell, right? He loves making him look stupid, and he loves making him do difficult, painful, embarrassing things on screen. And Campbell is like this goofy, amiable jock who's always down with the spirit of the thing. And then, right, you have this transformation at the end of Evil Dead 2 that you just think like, there's no way they can pull this off, this guy becoming a badass. And then it's like, now he's sort of become, against all odds, after the first like, 1 3/4 movies, a genuine kind of action star by the end of 2. And then their choices. So we're going to take that and, as you said, turn him into an asshole and an idiot. Like, we cannot let him be conventionally cool. If he's now confident, then it has to be a problem.
Yeah, I was thinking about it in relation to like, because it had been so long between Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, and like. I was thinking about it in terms of like Terminator 2, which was the year before. But this was like a type of action hero was really just around. And you were being told, I felt like I was being told as like a teenage girl, like that I had to love Arnold, that I couldn't just like admire him as a strong bully, but also he had to be my friend too. And I was like, no, like I've seen Pumping Iron. This guy's a Nazi. He's bad. And I feel like I feel like there was also like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal. It was like a type of muscle man that you were supposed to be like, yeah. And there's something that's fun about like doing the full transformation of taking Ash from, because the only way Ash's character logically makes sense in Army of Darkness is if you're like, the events of the previous 2 movies have driven him insane. And he has like,
right.
He doesn't care anymore. He's just, his personality has like changed because he just, all he's ever done is like have girlfriends and murder them. Like Ash doesn't even have a job until the 3rd movie, right? We never know that he has a job. He just has girlfriends.
Right, we're unaware of any. Yeah, his only backstory in 1 and 2 is he has a girlfriend and he has to kill her. That's really it.
Right,
and in 1,
and he buys her a shitty necklace.
He bought her a shitty necklace, and in 1 he doesn't say groovy, and in 2 they're like, but what if also he says groovy? And it's like, okay, well that's our big addition to the Ash character. I mean. It's funny what you're saying, Eva. It's not just like you say that Arnie was big and strong and all that. It's in the 90s. There's the pivot to like we need to soften those guys. We need those guys to suddenly be family friendly in a way they weren't before. Like that was sort of galling at the time. I was little when this movie came out, but still but
also like peak of like the 90s were the peak of that sort of like muscle upon muscle, hyper violent action movie that was like riddled with groany one-liners, right? And part of the appeal was like when Arnold says consider that a divorce, does he know that's funny at all, right? Like when Stallone gets these lines or Van Damme, they deliver it in a way where it's just like, do they understand that's a joke? Is it winking at all? Are they taking that totally on face level? And then like they give Ash shittier, blunter lines in this, and he delivers them with this attitude of like, I know this is fucking awful, right? And somehow he's able to thread this needle where it's like he's mocking almost the principle of having these guys turn like 1 degree away from the lens and say the fucking thing. But also the lines work. Like it is bizarre that all of his one-liners in this movie have successfully achieved some sort of stickiness with fans as like badass quotable one-liners, even though it almost feels like the point is, what's the most groan-inducing thing we can have Bruce Campbell say? And how hard can he like fucking oversell it? How much spit can he put on the ball?
Yeah, and then also on top of that, Griffin, the movie is adding one more layer on with like asshole mean Ash like delivering these terrible one-liners and acting like and bragging about his weird job and like being suddenly completely self-aware, like having no self-awareness from like the sweet beta that he was in the first movie, but then just having like basically in every scene like an old lady punches him in the face 150 times.
Right. But also, like, enough time has passed that there is zero boyishness left in him, right? He is, like, fully a man now.
Oh, yeah.
Still hot, though.
So hot.
Oh, still incredibly hot. Still incredibly hot. But also, like, in 2, when he's just, like, gorgeous. And in this, you're like, he's maybe crossed over into comically handsome. Mm-hmm. Like, where it's hard to take him on face level, where he's in, like, Carrie Elwes territory, where it's like, what do you do after Princess Bride? You have to do Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Right.
You cannot do the straight version of this.
Right. I mean,
right.
But it's just every time I watch one of these, I put on Evil Dead 1 and I'm like, God, Bruce Campbell, such a cutie. And then every time I watch another one, I have the same reaction. I'm like, it's not like he's not a handsome guy now. He's very handsome. Mm-hmm. He's got the great jaw still. Like, I love it. It's just, you always think of him as funny, and yet you forget just what a gorgeous specimen he is. That's all.
Oh no. Ben.
What?
I feel like an idiot.
Okay.
I forgot that it's Brooklyn's birthday.
You forgot, Griffin? Oh, no.
I forgot that it's Brooklyn's birthday. I knew I tied the string around my finger for a reason.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so wait. All right, we got to maybe plan something, like last minute? Should we get flowers? Well, what do you think?
This is the thing. This is why I didn't want to forget. Because there's something special about when it's Brooklyn's birthday. Brooklyn doesn't do birthdays the same way everyone else does birthdays.
Sure, okay.
Ben?
Yeah?
when it's Brooklyn's birthday, they'll have a sale if they want to. Sale if they want to. Sale if they want to. You would sale too if it happened to you.
Oh my God. A sale on their birthday.
On their birthday. It's a gift for us. That's the thing about Brooklinen, is the gift is for us. Okay?
They're giving back, man.
They're giving back, and you can celebrate the home of the internet's favorite sheets. And it's their 8th birthday with their biggest sale of the year kicking off this week.
The birthday sale is definitely something to be excited about because, Griffin, you mentioned the sheets, okay?
Yes.
We're also talking about luxurious towels and robes.
Yes.
Apparently weighted blankets. I'm seeing here silk eye masks and pillowcases. All of this is 20% off.
Ben, as far as I'm concerned, Brooklyn's birthday sale is the opposite of a mummy.
How so?
It's something you'll be excited to unwrap. If I see a mummy, I go, keep it wrapped.
Yeah.
Let's keep those creepy crawly bugs inside.
I don't want to see what's under there.
I don't want to see what's under there. Keep it wrapped. Brooklyn birthday
goopy.
Sale. It's not goopy. I promise you, if you order from Brooklyn, it will not be goopy. Okay? Brooklyn's the home of the internet's favorite sheets. They were created in 2014 to give customers luxury, hotel-level home essentials that don't break the bank. And as you said, everything from snuggly sheets, cozy towels, robes, loungewear, accessories, and more. And by working directly with suppliers, Brooklyn cuts out the luxury markups and pass those savings on to their customers so you get their incredible products at a reasonable cost, okay? And if you need the extra nudge to purchase, you check the 5-star reviews, over 100,000 of them. Yeah, you heard that right. 100,000 5-star reviews for 8 golden years of Brooklyn. And I got the sheets. I only have Brooklyn sheets. When I need to wash my Brooklyn's, I swap them out for a different set of Brooklyn's. I keep on re-upping because I love Brooklyn and I love Rich and Vicky Fulop, the creators of Brooklyn. And just an FYI in case the two of you are ever looking for a third. Look, Ben, don't miss out. Brooklyn's biggest sale of the year is here with 20% off everything.
Once again, birthday sale.
Birthday sale.
Get 20% off everything. Store-wide.
And if you're listening after the sale, if you kept this episode in your feed for a couple extra weeks, you can still save. You visit brooklyn.com, use promo code BLANK, BLANK, for $20 off your purchase of $100. That's BROOKLINEN.com, promo code BLANK.
I want to know, Eva, what your history is with this movie, because I sort of said mine, which is like I avoided it for a bit, and then when I got to it, I was like, "This is so much fun! Like, why would this have a bad rep?"
Yeah. So I'm older than you guys. I was in high school in like the mid to late 90s.
Sure.
So solidly, like video store era. There were pre-DVD basically. And it was very much like I had like a small group of friends and we wanted to be like movie people one day, and we would rent Sam Raimi movies and watch them together constantly. Like him and Peter Jackson were like our people, like that we felt like we had the secret knowledge of. And it was really interesting, like both of them, watching them sort of become like mainstream after high school was really interesting because they really did feel like a secret that only the cool people knew about Evil Dead and Army of Darkness. And I think at some point I owned the Army of Darkness. I bought the video store in our neighborhood was going out of business, and I bought Army of Darkness, and I watched it, like I said, like hundreds of times. I mean, like when watching it this time, when Ash comes out of the pit and he does the long monologue where he's like, "You want some?" to all the guys, I knew every line in it. In my head, I just was like, "You want some, huh?" Like I knew when he was going to turn to the camera.
Right.
Cadence.
Right.
Oh, so good. And then I told you this, David, but in my early 20s, I was working for a production company that was doing these countdown specials for Entertainment Weekly, and they did like the top horror films of all time. And I was like a producer, called a producer, but I was basically a coordinator, like a set coordinator on it. And Bruce Campbell hosted this special, and I ended up shooting for like 4 days in the desert with Bruce Campbell on this really crazy, strenuous, like low budget shoot where he was fighting zombies, and he was so cool. Like he was like, it was totally the dream. Was like, not only was he like very funny, elevated this weird material, but also like, because it was this super low budget thing, I just kind of cast a bunch of my friends and like got all my friends on set because they weren't paying anything. And like anyone, whenever he had downtime, like if you wanted to talk to him about like Evil Dead, he would just tell stories and stuff to like the crew, to the cast. He was so generous and nice. And you could tell also like he was really proud of his career and just like really proud of Evil Dead because he paid for Evil Dead basically. And he knew that. He just like, so he just was like, it was just such I love him so much, like in retrospect too, just being like, man, he could have been such a dick to us because we were arguably wasting his time. And
right. And it's this annoying, weird project, and like he doesn't need to make an effort or whatever, right? Like, yeah. I've watched it. You sent me, I guess it's sort of a cut together of everything, right? Like it's like a 47-minute video on YouTube.
Yeah. Of all the like all the wraparounds that he did. It really weird. But yeah, he was just like,
it's kind of great, but it's bizarre. Yeah.
Side note, just from what you were saying before, it was for AMC, and at the time, AMC was mostly just showing like Bachelor Party all the time. But like when we were producing the thing, like the head of AMC on one of the calls was like, "Oh yeah, we're doing our first like original show. It's about Madison Avenue advertising. It'll be out next year." And that was like, that puts it all in like in time or whatever.
Yeah. Right. And then everything changes.
It is so crazy because before then AMC was like, what if we were a worse A&E? Like they weren't even like let's be a worse what do you call it? TCM. Let's like A&E is a little too classy. What if we showed shittier movies? Like,
and even like TBS and TNT had very clear identities in what kind of movies they showed.
Yeah, and they had like the occasional sitcom, and like you'd watch like baseball on TBS or whatever, right? Like AMC was just
but it's like I'll watch Major League 2 or Shawshank. Right. And then as you said, Eva, it's like Bachelor Party is the best they can get.
Yeah.
I just imagine like those old cable days where it's like Warner Brothers comes in, they're like, all right, here's our 1994 movie slate. And HBO's like, we'll take this and this. Like they're all bidding like crazy. And AMC's just sitting back in the chair like, we can wait. We can wait for the dregs. Don't worry. I got 2 nickels here.
The Phantom, you say. Billy Zane, you say.
Oh, man.
It is. I mean, the way you were just sort of describing him, Eva, and like how much he could have gotten away with being an asshole. Not that anyone should ever be an asshole, right? But that like it is bizarre. It's notable how much of a nice guy he is, and how much he appreciates his fans and is proud of his legacy and all that stuff. That is the thing that made him such like a cult icon. It's like, I mean, when we were doing the Back to the Future movies and talking about how Bob Gale has like made his life about being the ambassador of Back to the Future, right? For all things. And it's like, what if the guy who was the Bob Gale of Evil Dead was also the star of Evil Dead and also still had a good career? Like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's not like he's only doing Evil Dead nostalgia stuff because there's no other options.
About Bruce Campbell's career at all. Like, so him being king of the convention or whatever, like that's just what he's the best at. Yeah.
But he's so happy to go around and talk about these movies and his legacy within them and how they were made and touch base with the fans and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I'm remembering my first association with this movie was before I even knew what Evil Dead was, right? Because I mean, I've talked about it in the other episodes, but it was one of those things where I was like, who's this guy who's like all over comic book stores? What is this weird franchise and this icon who doesn't seem to be part of larger popular culture? I'm not going to see him at like the mural at the pizza parlor. or AMC or whatever. But like within comic book stores, this guy's iconography is like big. But years before that, it's some like 90s VHS. I must have rented some Universal VHS where they had the trailers before the video. I remember seeing the trailer for this movie as like a young child and being like, what is this? Like the existence of this movie doesn't make sense to me. They're treating like this guy like he's iconic, but this is not any movie star I know of. This doesn't seem to be a movie star that my parents know of. It's not even I'm too young for this guy, I'm like, this guy isn't Nick Cage, but they're positioning him like he is. Right, and then the weird like, is there a presumed familiarity I'm supposed to have with this character in this trailer? They're treating him like he's this archetype. And what is the aesthetic of this movie? That it has this level of like scale and monsters. How could anyone get this movie made? And then years later, when I watched Evil Dead 1 and 2, I was like, wait a second, Army of Darkness is the third Evil Dead movie? Like, it made sense to me that that's the only circumstance in which this movie could come into being, but also have such a bizarre tone. Like it's the amount of fucking cartoon sound effects in this movie and like literal head spinning and like eyes bugging out, faces getting stretched and shit.
It's funny. Yeah. This movie obviously was trying to be PG-13. You guys know that, right? Like that was their hope, and it got an R rating, which hurt it at the box office. It feels PG-13. Like it feels more teenage and fun and light and its energy or whatever. And I guess it was probably just, do you think it's just that it was too weird? Like the violence isn't even horrifying, but it's just sort of bizarre. And that's why, like, or is it just because it was an Evil Dead movie and they were like, we're going to just tend towards like, this is for grownups.
It must have been some combination of the two, because nothing about this movie screams R, and it's like there's a lot less viscera than there was in the last two, because you're mostly dealing with like fleshless skeletons.
A lot of bones, Ben.
And shit.
Oh, I know. Ben? Before we started recording, I said this movie is chock full of skeletons.
It sure is.
You don't usually get skeleton bad guys. It's a rare skeleton monster movie.
There's so much incredible bone work.
And not only that, usually you're lucky if you get one or two. This one has what I would refer to as an army of darkness.
For sure. Yeah.
They they have little heads for their drums. They have a thigh for they play a flute that's a bone.
Yeah. Oh my God, man. Like all of the just different little ways to get them to move and do stuff throughout the movie. I was pausing. I was taking notes.
You were getting ideas from this, Ben?
Yeah, I was writing. It really inspired me.
Don't do it, Ben. Whatever you're planning, don't do it.
Yeah, don't raise any bone armies, Ben. We don't need that right now. The world's a little on edge. I don't think a skeleton army has emerged. Is something I need to be reading.
I knock a shovel or I move a shovel out of the way, like off camera, so that yeah.
Are your hands covered in dirt? What's going on?
No.
All right. Let me give you some context, Griff.
I was just gonna say, just quickly, just about skeleton. I just want to say before we move on, the context, before we dig into the context, if you will. Wow. It is funny how much like the Ray Harryhausen influence on the titular Army of Darkness is very apparent, but like in behavior, the skeletons are more like the fucking Walt Disney skeleton dance short,
Oh yeah,
like they're just like, what are funny visual gags you can do with skeletons? To Eva's point,
they're cute.
Yeah, they're cute. They're kind of more animal, even though they're human skeletons, obviously, right? They're not like the Harryhausen, like where it's like this is a soldier. It just looks like a skeleton. They're right. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
they're having fun, no matter what.
They're having a great time.
They're having fun. So, as we've mentioned, they make Evil Dead, then they make Crime Wave. That doesn't work. Okay, we're in retreat. We're gonna make Evil Dead 2. That's the thing we can sell. Mm-hmm. They make Evil Dead 2. Initially wanted to call it Medieval Dead, and then they wanted to call it Army of Darkness. It's called Dead by Dawn, obviously. So they do that. De Laurentiis, I guess his sub company had folded. He did have sequel rights. Griffin, after Darkman. Universal is happy enough with Darkman that they decide to split the budget with De Laurentiis. So it's 50-50 from each whatever company, $12 million budget. They send Ivan and Sam off to come up with the script, and they are very insistent together that they, I guess, do not want it to just be a part 3. They wanted it to stand on its own. Right. Like they like, I want someone to be able to come in and enjoy the film without worrying about, Evil Dead lore. Not that there's a ton of Evil Dead lore in those first 2 movies, really. But it's not a lot of
but that is
rules, I guess, is right. Like
sure. Yeah. It is what's funny about this movie, though, because, like, as a kid, seeing that trailer on a VHS, I was like, I understand what type of movie this is presenting itself as, which is fish out of water, modern guy lands in medieval times, right? Like a modern snarky action hero is now dropped into supernatural, evil, medieval epic. But Ash is so bizarre as a character. I think that was the thing that jumped out to me as a kid, where it's just like, if you're just starting the process of writing a movie from square one with that premise, this is not the guy you put at the center of it.
Right.
Like, it's just confusing that he starts out with a chainsaw for a hand. And even though the movie has to, like, front load this, like, I bet you're wondering what happened to me, and then watching Bruce Campbell have to act out the same events for the 3rd time now.
Yeah, this is true.
I did locate one. There is one rule of Evil Dead, which I did figure out. I didn't really click in until, because I watched all 3 movies this weekend. It became very clear in Army of Darkness that the main rule is that the Evil Dead are horny. Because in this one they're very horny, and they're always kind of horny, but this one they're just really horny.
You're right, and zombies are never horny. You're very right. And I know the Deadites are not exactly zombies, but they basically are. Like, they're possessed peoples. I don't know, but you're right. They're horny and they do bits, and those are both unusual
they're having a blast. Okay, they're back from the dead. Okay, and they're enjoying themselves.
Oh yeah, that one old lady Deadite does the little trick in the first castle scene where she's got her eyes open. She's like, hee hee, while they're all coming up to her.
It's cute.
I wouldn't say cute necessarily, but that's the other thing, is they love fucking with this guy, right? Like, it's sort of the arc of these movies is just Ash being cursed beyond repair. As you said, Eva, really just like his brain breaking, right?
Yeah.
And just, he cannot escape this fucking shit. He's doomed to be followed by these forces forever. And part of it is because these forces seem to find it funnier to fuck with him than anyone else. Like, he just reacts to it worse.
Right. I mean, he had to fight his hand for more than an hour. Like, he had to cut his hand off, and then his hand still flipped him off. Yep. And still was fucking with him.
Still handsy.
Yes.
Still it's mean true. To him.
It is incredible. I mean, talking about, like, towing this line of, like, making the movie stand on its own, but also making it a third Evil Dead. You have this, like, okay, here's this high concept setup, right? And the final act of the movie is going to be big medieval battle, knights versus skeletons. The middle act of the movie is, well, obviously we got to go back to the thing where he's just stuck in a small shed.
Right, where he's in the woods.
And things fuck with him for 30 minutes.
Talking to himself, weird shit happens. Right. It's very
no
Looney
other
Tunes.
Characters on screen unless it's another version of him.
The Three Stooges is the major visual inspiration.
Yeah.
And Universal is like, okay. And Dino De Laurentiis is like, I love you, Sammy. Good job. I give you a big kiss. I don't know what he sounded like. That's just how I imagined him.
Yeah, no, he sounded like a little. You were underplaying.
They definitely, both Sam and Ivan say, like, no one gave us any notes on this one. I guess at this point it's just sort of like, well, they know what they're doing. So,
whoa.
Like, like they were not really being messed with by the studio anymore. Dino was very much like, sounds good, which is fine, is good, and they earned it or whatever. But like, I wonder, like, if now a studio would be like medieval. I don't think so. Like, let's try something, right? Like, if the premise itself might turn off a studio just because like medieval stuff doesn't really play, right? Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm crazy.
I should say specifically this type of like insincere medieval stuff where all the costumes are dumb and they're in it's a castle
the Monty
in a
Python
desert.
element, right? Yes. Well,
a desert castle.
That's up. Yes. So initially they wanted to go to Spain or England and find a castle, but apparently it's hard to get a castle. I guess it's hard to rent a castle and stage a giant medieval battle. So then they're like, fine, we'll just build, we'll build a little castle. We'll fill the rest in post-production or whatever. They looked in Utah. I might take someone aside and be like, just FYI, nowhere in Europe looks like Utah. Like that's not gonna read. Like, but eventually they ended up in California. They shot it in the studios, like in Acton, California. I don't know if anyone knows Acton, California, but it looks like it's whatever, like north of LA, out in the desert there, right? Like not far. It's where they would shoot westerns or whatever.
Yeah. It's like the Manson Ranch. They shot this like
it's that shit, right?
So, the Spawn Ranch.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's like they set it up. I mean, at the end of Evil Dead 2 when he lands and everyone's like hailing him.
Right.
In medieval times, it looks like this, but it would have been such a good opportunity to just abandon that. And much like Evil Dead is wont to do, just change it to fit however you want it for this movie. But yes, they're stuck in weird, like tumbleweed medieval times. And I always felt like, well, it's a cool concept, time traveling, medieval times or whatever. And then Hodgman in our Evil Dead 2 episode, like, explained it so perfectly, where he's like, imagine these guys have made successful horror movies and they come in and pitch to you, we're going to do this, but at a Ren fair. Like, that is what the vibe of this
Absolutely.
is.
Yes. It's not what I would have predicted. I know that's obviously how Evil Dead 2 ends. So I know they had called their shot there, but it's just not the energy I would have expected from Sam Raimi. And like, again, we've been reading about the guy. Everything he talks about, he's like, I love the Three Stooges. Like, he's not saying like, you know what I love? Excalibur. Like, that was a movie that meant a lot to me or anything. Like, I don't know where this is coming from, but whatever.
But it almost feels like that's what it's coming from, where like Connor Ratliff, dear friend of the show, past and future guest,
we love Connor.
Talked about how when he started doing improv, he bought the ultimate box set of every single Three Stooges short.
Okay.
And I was like, why did you do that? And he was like, well, because I realized I'd have to start a lot of improv scenes with professions. And I feel like people pick the same 2 or 3 professions. And I was like, what's the thing I can watch with a lot of good professions in it? And so, like, every Three Stooges short, it's like now they're
carpenters,
firemen.
right? Yeah.
Now they're knights. Now they're this or that. It does feel like that influence of it, where it's like he's not interested in making Excalibur. He's interested in the idea of what can you dress Bruce Campbell up as? Like, what's a different patina you can drop him into?
So this is just the third beat, like the third beat of the Evil Dead Herald.
right. It's that improv thing where the joke becomes every third beat is like, are you in space? Are you in the future?
Yeah. You're the president.
Which this movie then sets up. Its alternate ending, fourth beat, is the future.
It's right. It's like post-apocalypse or whatever.
Yeah. It's just such a funny combination of things. And to your point, David, there was like this window, and I think it happened again sort of in the mid 2000s, but in the early 90s, where like video was just so lucrative, where they could look at it and be like, it cost $12 million. Dino's putting up half of it. The star is some guy who's not really a movie star, but Darkman did well opening weekend. This thing will make its money back on video. We'll sell it to cable. Right. Like, there's almost no way for this movie to lose money. So why even give them notes? Because it doesn't even matter.
100%.
Have you guys talked about the apartment they all lived in with
the Coens and
yes.
Frances McDormand and Holly Hunter, the Hottie apartment?
The Hottie apartment.
123 Hottie Street. Go on, carry on.
I feel like I read that they wrote this in the apartment potentially, or this like this the some of this, an early draft of this maybe was written in the apartment.
Of Army of Darkness?
I thought so, but maybe
you
I'm
might be
wrong.
Right. Here, wait, let me see. There's definitely some stuff in our research here.
They had started this much earlier, and then it was after Darkman that they got to go ahead and really wrote like the final script. But I think there were earlier drafts of this.
Ivan Reitman, it must be stated, was an acting physician at the time. Like he was working as a doctor in young.
Ivan Raimi, not Ivan Reitman.
Ivan Raimi. I'm sorry, not Ivan Raimi.
All right,
not a lot of Ivans out there. Was a physician. So he is a doctor. He's working as a doctor in Ohio. So I guess he just like would moonlight on the side with Sam and cook up these scripts. So maybe he's coming out. Maybe I don't know. All I know is that this is a very cute quote from Ivan where he says. This is Ivan, yes. We fight over commas, and when we get in a fight, we don't mind resorting to fisticuffs. Sam does improvise a lot because when you get on set, you realize there's certain things, you need to improvise on. Sam says that Ivan has the easy job. I clean up your mess. But I just like Ivan being like, there'll be fisticuffs between us when we're fighting over where to put an M dash or whatever.
I have a question about the apartment that's been weighing on my mind, and it's completely... a conspiracy theory that I cooked up in my head that I know is not real, but can I just present it to you guys?
Absolutely.
Please.
The other person in that apartment was Kathy Bates.
Yes, a young Kathy Bates.
She never was in a Coen Brothers movie or a Sam Raimi movie after that.
Bizarre, because you could see her fit into both of those universes very well.
Only... I was like, that can't be true. Surely she's in a Coen Brothers movie.
Right.
She... feels like a character in a Coen Brothers movie. Just regular Kathy Bates. Just nice lady Kathy Bates feels like she. That's so weird. So do you think they like that she like didn't pick her hair out of the shower drain or whatever?
That's my theory.
Fucking Kathy Bates.
Was she a bad roommate, or were they all bad roommates and she was the good roommate? Because another thing, when I thought about it a little more, I was like, oh, she's also like 10 years older than them.
Right. So maybe she was kind of the den mother and she got sick of like picking up after them or whatever.
But what happened? What happened in that apartment that she never ends up in any of the movies? I
gotta know because it's also funny. Yeah. Like why, how did that come about? Like, why is that the crew? It's Campbell, Ethan and Joel, Holly and Francis, Kathy Bates. I think Scott Spiegel lived with them as well. Like why are they all together? Is it like Kathy Bates winning an Oscar and like now I'm imagining like Joel and Coen and Sam Raimi and everyone like they're all sitting on the couch and they're like, yeah, well, she's still like, didn't know how to use a vacuum cleaner. Like are they still because like there's no reason for them not to work together after all of their fame, right? Like everyone now knows we are talented.
Security deposit back because of Bates.
Right. Maybe it's like a pickle, a jar of pickles or something. You know what I mean? Like. Oh, they still it's like a dispute over something that dumb. Even
it's a real world. She was the puck of the apartment with the peanut butter left open.
Puck. She was like walking around with like curlers in, like yelling at them for making a ruckus when they're giggling over like lines they're gonna write for Ash.
But that sounds like a character that would appear in either a Sam Raimi or a Coen Brothers movie. Is Kathy Bates in curlers yelling? Like that sounds about right.
I mean, I think Kathy Bates' first movie was Taking Off, the Milos Forman pot comedy.
Oh, wow.
With Buck Henry. And she's in that as like a young folk singer auditioning. A big part of that movie is it's like two parents trying to find their daughter who ran off to audition for like some sort of music show, and you see all these auditions, and one of them is Kathy Bates very earnestly singing a folk song that I believe she herself wrote, and that's like a decade before she would have been living in this apartment.
Guys,
whereas everyone else is really starting out.
I have what did you find? Further wrinkle that I must introduce.
Ooh, okay. I'm so glad this theory is taken off.
It's not going to give us any conclusive answers one or the other. And already this feels like the beginning of a long, open-ended podcast series that doesn't really answer any questions, but just asks a lot.
Is it going to raise more questions?
Right. One of those shows where like by episode 10 is like, I'm at the end of my journey and I still don't know why Kathy Bates and the Coen brothers don't get along. But one of those series where you're like, wait a second, why did I listen to any of this? But anyway, as you may know, in 1997, after the success of Fargo, there was a pilot made for a Fargo TV series starring Edie Falco as Marge Gunderson, right?
Kathy Bates directed
Kathy Bates directed the pilot. What's up with that?
Sorry for jumping the gun, but I just remembered that.
Wait,
Jesus.
but was this another like we don't approve of this like Fargo
That's what I'm
show?
saying. Did she direct it as a fuck you to the Coens, where they were like, "Well, we don't want there to be a cop show based on Fargo," and she's like, "Well, I'm directing it, so you can go fuck yourself."
Because it was a big deal that the FX Noah Hawley Fargo had like a vague stamp of approval from the Coen
they at
brothers,
least
where
were
they
like,
were like,
okay.
we know this exists and it's fine.
No, they
Right.
didn't. No, they wouldn't even like. No.
No,
Like
they're
Frances
against it?
McDormand,
Am I wrong about this?
like scowls at the Emmys because she's like she's
to be
nominated.
fair, Frances McDormand scowls a lot, but okay, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah,
I was
to be fair.
'cause I was Googling trying to answer the Bates question. I found an interview where Frances talks about Kathy moving into the house and says no more.
Okay.
But she also like slams the Fargo show in that same interview.
Wow.
Okay. Well, maybe look. I'm just saying, I'd now, because at that point in her life, Kathy Bates, obviously she's an Academy Award winner, but still, she had directed like one episode of Homicide: Life on the Street and one episode of NYPD Blue. Like, it's not like she was doing tons and tons of TV directing. So it feels like she's maybe either taking it as a fuck you to the Coens or with their blessing. But I'm leaning to the former.
She also shows up at the house with she had already been nominated for a Tony. She got nominated for Night Mother quite young. Like Holly and
so
Frances
maybe
were like
too
friends.
fancy.
Yeah, they were like Yale drama school friends.
She was much deeper into her career than everyone else, in addition to being older.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Terrence
She'd done a
McNally
lot
had
of Broadway.
written a play for her, like at that point in her career.
I now also and we have to move on from this after this, but how big was this house? I now need a floor plan.
This is the
I
other
need to
thing.
know who's sleeping where.
I know it's in Silver Lake. It's a former hunting lodge.
Wow.
That sounds pretty cool. Wait a second.
It's a 12-parter, guys. We'll move on.
It's a 12. We just added two more parts.
We got to make this into a limited series.
Oh man.
I feel like whenever Franny does interviews about her and Joel falling in love, the thing she says is that like he was really well read and we would like talk about books on set, and then he like came over and would like read to me at night and we drink hot chocolate and like he'd read books aloud and we discuss them. Do you think Kathy Bates was the one who was just constantly like knocking on the door from the inside of her room going like, shut the fuck up,
stop reading Postman Always Rings Twice to your fucking drama student girlfriend?
Put the hot cocoa down and go to fucking sleep. Like, it's such a charming story. And then do you think she was just like, I have work in the morning, I'm not amused?
Well, we will never know. And
oh man, thank you for taking this journey.
Maybe we will. Maybe
we should say Kathy Bates is our guest on the For Love of Each Game.
I'm just imagining a world where I get to talk to Joel Coen, say, for like 15 minutes. And it's like, it's Joel Coen. It's a director I admire. Like, there's a lot I could ask him. And I'm just like, look, when you're like in your 20s, like, I just immediately am like, I just gotta ask, can you just shed some light on this for me? And he might literally be like,
floor plan?
He might literally be like, which I feel like Joel Coen's normal thing, where he's like, I don't know, it was fine. It was normal. Like, and right, like, you're always just sort of like, hey, why'd you make this Macbeth movie? And he's like, I don't know, wanted to do Macbeth, and I figured I'd do it this way. And that's what I did. Like,
it was available, and these other people moved in.
I think he does that. He steps outside. He's like, well, nice meeting you. Gets on the phone, calls Sam Raimi. He's like, someone's asking about Kathy.
Someone's digging. We're going to get canceled. They're going to find out about Kathy. Anyway. Army of Darkness, right? Some more. All right, so they're shooting in Acton, California. It sounds pretty annoying because this movie mostly takes place at night, and I don't know. I mean, Eva, you're out there on the West Coast. You can tell us. Apparently, it gets very cold in the desert at night.
Yeah, it's dust. Acton's like dusty. I think it's kind of like farmland. It's right over the grapevine, I think.
Yeah, it looks like right, exactly. It's not like physically far from LA, but it looks like
it's flat and cattle ranchy and very cold at night, probably very hot during the day.
they have to wait for the sun go down, that they don't have a lot of time, and it's freezing cold, and because it's hot in the daytime, everyone has to immediately like shift into cold mode. Bill Pope, Griffin, one of the greats, of course,
one of the greats.
He shot Darkman, so but that was his first movie. I just Bill Pope's 90s alone. I don't know if you know, like Griff.
Let's go through them.
Darkman. Yeah. Okay, then a movie called Closet Land that I've never heard of. Whatever. Some Madeline Stone movie. Army of Darkness. Fire in the Sky. Very underrated sci-fi abduction movie. Blank Check. The film Blank Check. Which, Clueless. Bound, of course, the Wachowskis.
Right.
Gridlocked, a movie I constantly talk about. Tim Roth and Tupac. Black comedy. Really good movie. Zero Effect, that sort of underrated Jake Kasdan comedy, and The Matrix.
Oh, yeah?
Like, almost everything he made was interesting. And then obviously in the 2000, he does Spider-Man and the Matrix sequels, and he did Team America and all that. Right.
I was not wrong. The other thing he does in 1999 is he's the DP on the pilot of Freaks and Geeks.
There you go. That's right. Probably because he'd worked with Jake Kasdan, right? Like that. Yeah.
Correct. But even still, that's a very influential show in terms of like, there had not been a comedy that looked like that at that point in time.
He's the best, and everyone talks about him like he's the best in all the research. Like he's the guy who's getting you through these crazy shooting nights really by working really, really fast. Like he was really, really good at that. And another problem they had is they had a bunch of fucking horses. Sam Raimi even talks about in these interviews the classic Clint Eastwood thing where you can't say action, because they know that word and then they start moving the second you say action. Like, you guys are aware of this, right?
That's wild.
I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood says like all right, and what's the other thing, Griffin? I gotta look it up now.
Enough of that.
You have to have like a safe word.
Yes, but,
right.
And it's and people apparently when they work with Eastwood, you know, like Tom Hanks tells some story about it. Like
yes, there's a great Graham Norton Tom Hanks clip where he's talking about on Sully that you're waiting for him, and then you look over and he's behind the monitor and he sort of just like waves his hand and he goes like, "Okay, go on then."
Right.
And then when the scene's done, you wait for him to call cut and you look over and he goes like, "Okay, enough of that." But it is like, it now reads as like Mystique, this like badass old man. But then he asked about it and he was like, "You just can't be loud with horses."
You don't want to spook the horses as he's shooting like Sully or whatever, a horseless film.
Yes, but he just never got over it. I mean, this movie just feels like such a nightmare to shoot, not just in terms of, yes, you're shooting in this like completely like acrid environment, but also arid environment, but also like you're shooting almost exclusively at night. There's a middle third of the movie, at least a solid third, where he is the only actual actor on set. And so many scenes where you have such complicated effects or like an army of animatronics that all need to be working in unison.
Yes, it sounds annoying. They used this thing called Intravision, which they also used for Darkman, which was sort of hard to explain. I think it's been driving our researcher JJ slightly insane reading so much about Intravision. So I feel a little bad and I want to at least shout it out. But the way he best describes it is it's like it's halfway between classic rear projection, right? And what that crazy shit they do now, like on The Mandalorian, what's it called, stagecraft or whatever, right? Where you're standing in front of like a monitor that's like has perfect, imagery behind it, right?
Well, and the big thing with that is that, like, if you adjust the camera, the angles and the perspective of the digital background adjust with the camera, and the lighting is rigged to the digital image, so the lighting matches the environment. It's like the most intuitive way to do this kind of thing now.
Right. Intravision, I think, is a more primitive version of that idea, right? Half of this movie apparently is shot using Intravision. They saved a lot of money doing it. You can't really tell. This movie looks pretty good, I would say. Like, it's that Raimi thing of like the special effects, anytime they're junky or goofy, it gets away with it because that's the cartoony energy, I guess. I don't know, but like and
he'll like throw the sound effect on there, or have the one-liner that just like, well, the joke is that now this character is acting like Daffy Duck or whatever.
But it basically combines pre-recorded like back projection with live action recording on set. JJ, please forgive me. I can't describe this shit. He sent me a long video. I tried to watch it. It was very boring. But it's crucial to them using stop motion, basically. Like it makes stop motion a lot easier to do because you could shoot the live action footage and then project the stop motion animation in the foreground. Oh God, he's gonna kill me. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's the other thing with this whole trilogy is they're using every single pre-CGI technique, right?
Absolutely.
In a way that's really impressive. And like, right, sometimes the Deadites are stop motion.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're guys in suits. Sometimes they're animatronics. And I just feel like, unlike a lot of movies like this, maybe where you're having like multiple techniques of like here's a bad comparison point I'm thinking of, right? Like in the Child's Play movies, it's mostly an animatronic.
Sure.
But then sometimes they will put a child or a little person inside a little Chucky costume. Or they will have a dummy Chucky doll that isn't rigged, that the actors just have to wrestle with. And your brain always clocks when the technique changes. When you're like, Chucky's not moving the right way. Whereas I feel like this time in this movie, anytime the vernacular of the characters or the special effects change, it's like on purpose. Mm-hmm. Like they're trying to make the most out of that specific weird movement.
Here's the best way. And then when I'm going to say sounds so counterintuitive, but instead of Bruce Campbell fights an invisible enemy and you imagine you put the enemy in afterwards, right? They would have already done the stop motion photography for the enemy, and Bruce Campbell has to precisely match the movements to fight it. Does that make sense? Like he's acting against something that's already been animated, so he can kind of see it, but he has to hit exact physical marks for it to look good. Does that?
It's like reverse Roger Rabbit, kind of.
Yes, and so they were acting to like numbers being called out, because they had this complicated number system to remember every physical movement that they had to do. Basically, Bruce Campbell found this incredibly torturous. It sounds so annoying, but I mean, it's cool.
This is like the single biggest thing about this movie for me is, I think I've talked about this before, but there was a thing on the tick where we had to essentially shoot something this way. Because there was a mad scientist character who created a shrink ray and he accidentally shrunk himself down. So I had to have scenes with like a tiny man. And they would shoot him in a big set, and I would stand off camera and say the lines, and we'd figure out the blocking of where I would be, and I'd step in so they would get like the lighting reference. And then the next day I had to go into a complete green screen space that just had marks taped off and an earpiece where they played back not just his lines, but my line readings from the day before. And I had to say them in unison and hit the marks at specific timing, both in terms of my movements and eye line. And then, like, if it was off by a centimeter, it'd be fucked, and they'd cut, and we'd go back to the beginning because they're like, you walked through a table or whatever. And it was impossible to do on like a TV schedule and budget for one scene. It was so difficult that for the rest of that episode, they made him a puppet that I held in my arms with the head turned to the camera, away from the camera, so that no one could see, and he just dubbed it later. And then they rewrote the character. They were like, I don't know, he's got a robot suit now. He doesn't have to be little anymore. This movie is like all that. Like almost every scene, he's interacting with elements like that, and he also has to be funny. Like he has to have his personality. It has to be fucking charisma. It's not like it's like, I don't know, perfunctory exposition scenes. And it does make you realize, like, not just, oh, well, this movie is like a tribute to Bruce Campbell and his love of this guy and his friend who he so badly wanted to make into a leading man and whatever. But it's like, you truly could not have done this movie with anyone else, because I don't think anyone else would have put up with this. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anyone else would have busted their ass hard enough to figure out how to reckon with all these technical shit things and also put a funny performance on top of that. Like, not only is the fact that the guy at the center of this movie is Bruce Campbell rather than Bruce Willis means you're putting that money back into the budget for all of those effects,
right,
but also that you have a guy who's like, I'll work an 18-hour day. Just tell me where I need to stand, and I'm going to solve
I'm
this.
lazy. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
I would. No. Nightmare.
Well, yeah, he kind of had already done it, right? Because
yeah,
who else would you trust? Like, he's already done this for you twice.
Of course.
It's the whole thing. It's like that's why they're good at this. But like, if I'm finally, my reaction to Universal being like, you have $12 million to make, the next one would be like, great, I can rest easy. That's a lot of money. This will be fun. We'll make like, some fun movie.
I get $2 million this time, and you have a stunt double do all the shit.
And instead, Sam Raimi's like, $12 million, great. How much can we possibly do? Right? Like, right. Well, what is everything that we could cram into this?
And not only that, can we put more on Bruce? Let's have him play 2 full-bodied characters that have to interact with each other. Also, like 5 mini ashes.
The tiny ashes.
The second Bruce.
Oh, my God. Do you guys like the tiny ashes?
The second Bruce has horrible makeup. Oh, I love them.
I love the shot of him from their POV of him stepping on them. I love that shot. It's beautiful.
Why is that so good? Because it doesn't make any fucking sense in the movie, really. No. It just sort of starts happening. But like, why is that good, Griffin? And like fucking, the stupid little marshmallows in Ghostbusters is lame. Like, what is it? Just because the technical prowess of it is so good? Is it because Bruce Campbell's performances are so good? Like, they have such good little stinker energy.
I think that's a huge part of it. Yeah. I think he's the right actor to both play the little stinkers and play the person who's being tortured by the little stinkers.
Them like, holding the gun and shooting. I always love that. Like after they poke him with the pitchfork, then they're like, let's shoot him with a gun. Oh God, I love them coming out of the mirror. Obviously, such a cool effect, like practically like a Lynchian effect.
Is their pitchfork just supposed to be a fork?
It's a fork
at their scale.
Yeah, right. It's just a regular fork.
Do you know what I think it is? I mean, I spent the last week with the aforementioned Connor Ratliff on a cruise ship.
Sure did.
So we, of course, spent a lot of time talking about old cartoons, the main language that Connor talks in.
Right.
And he's such a historian of all these things and watches, I'm going to watch every cartoon featuring Donald Duck in chronological order so I can chart the evolution of the character and whatever. And a thing that we were sort of talking about a lot was that was something like Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, right? There's not a build to them. Like the new Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoon is not acknowledging or continuing the chronology of the last one.
Right.
But that you are aware of the fact that the audience has now seen 6 of these or 10 of these. And it's there's a format you need to fit, but you also need to build on the bits. And sometimes it's heightening and sometimes it's moving laterally. But it's what kind of gags fit into a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoon? Mm-hmm. And I think this movie, The Little Ass Shit, works along with everything else because they're just sort of in that zone where it's you know what the format is. He goes into a small contained space in the middle of the woods and things fuck with him, right? We've now seen this 3 times. This is the 3rd time it's happened. What other kinds of things can fuck with him? What are the ways he can be fucked with? And because you're riffing on that sort of cartoon language, it's what are the things that can happen? Someone can get big. You can have a bunch of a little thing, I just think when it happens in Ghostbusters Afterlife, it's so out of conversation with anything else that's happening in that movie, let alone the franchise at large. Whereas with this, you're just I don't know. You've made 3 of these. What's going to happen now? Is it funny if he's little? Is it funny if he's evil?
It's Chuck Jones timing also. It's
yes,
where the Ghostbusters timing is just chaotic and cynical.
Right.
But I was thinking about, I don't know if you guys talked about this in Evil Dead 2, but that incredible sequence, I laughed so hard when he puts the woman's head in the vice, he looks up, he sees the outline of the chainsaw on the wall, yes. And then the headless corpse runs in holding the chainsaw. Perfect timing, purely comic timing, not even to scare you. And I feel that's what the whole cabin sequence is in this. It's this is just a Tom and Jerry cartoon at this point.
It set up its rules, because this is now the 3rd beat of this, where it's we're just here for invention. There's gonna be an eyeball on his shoulder. Just throw shit at me.
Really like the eyeball on his shoulder. Very, very good. Very nightmarish. We definitely in that episode, by the way, talk about the outline of the chainsaw. My favorite
funny.
part. Right? Yes. I'm gonna do that whenever I have a shed. I'm gonna draw outlines of every tool just so I know where they go when I replace. Right? That's the only logic I can think of. Chainsaw goes here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
And he goes. He still has to go chainsaw.
Yes.
Ben.
What's up, Griff?
Ben.
Yeah.
It's simple.
What's simple?
This ad copy is so simple, you're not going to be confused for even a second. Can I tell you?
Okay. Yeah. Please.
Bombas's mission is simple, : make the most comfortable clothes ever, and match every item sold with an equal item donated, period. So, when you buy Bombas, you are also giving to someone in need, period. Done.
Okay, so question. You're telling me,
Yes.
producer Ben
Husley, I'm telling you.
comfy clothes,
Yep.
and then when you purchase it,
You
also are having a person getting clothes donated to them.
The specific item that you just bought will be
The
matched.
same item.
The same item.
Y'all are twins. You're matchy match.
Match every item sold with an equal item donated. Bombas designed their socks, shirts, and underwear to be the clothes you can't wait to put on every day. Everything they make is soft, seamless, tagless, and has a luxurious, cozy feel. They're made from super soft materials like merino wool, Pima cotton, and even cashmere, which makes them the perfect cozy layers. Okay?
All right.
And they got options just in terms of the socks, which is like their bread and butter. They got comfy performance styles for every sport and activity that keeps you moving. Or you can get lazy day socks for someone like me.
Oh, perfect. Because I've been really active lately. So that's like something for me. That's great.
Look, Ben, my problem is I'm always trying to stay planted on my own 2 feet. But I keep on doing accidental risky business slides across my hardwood floors. And Bombas, they have the gripper socks. If you just want to like walk around your home with socks on, they got the gripper socks with the little rubber dimples on the bottom so you don't slip and slide, unless you save that for when you want to go on a slip and slide, which we're almost at slip and slide season. Okay?
I just got to say, though, what's so exciting to me, you can get a shirt, you can get comfy pants, socks, you could get a whole fit, and then somebody else out there is going to be rocking that same fit.
Exactly. Because did you know, Ben, that socks, underwear, and t-shirts are the 3 most requested clothing items at homeless shelters? That's the reason why Bombas donates one for every item you buy, is because it's actually wanted and needed. And Bombas, they never put this in their ad copy, but I always feel compelled to mention it. Bombas is the most successful product in Shark Tank history. Damon John made one hell of a deal when he signed up with Bombas, and you're going to get one hell of a deal if you go to bombas.com/check. You get 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/check.
Wait, Griff, can you spell that for me?
I just did. bombas.com/check for 20% off. Bombas.com/check. Order some clothes and give some clothes at the same time.
Should we discuss the plot of Army of Darkness? Ash has been captured by, some, King Arthur-esque guy, right?
Well, I want to ask before we dig into this.
Yeah.
Because it's relevant. Eva, as someone who's watched this movie like 100 times, I assumed the VHS that you had was the theatrical cut?
I guess so, yeah.
Must have been.
Yeah. I think it...
Because there are 4 different versions of this movie.
Okay. I watched... The version I know is the one I just watched on HBO Max.
And does that end
which is
with
the version on HBO
the
Max
S-Mart ending?
Ends at the supermarket. It's the classic ending. Yes.
Hail to the King, baby.
Right.
Hail to the King.
Right. So there's the 81-minute theatrical cut.
Yes.
Which was Dino De Laurentiis and Universal cutting it down after I think he originally got an NC-17.
No.
Crazy.
And they were...
I don't think so.
I saw it was NC-17 and then it went down to R.
I think I read that too, actually.
Well, let me look it up. Because the others got NC-17. Oh, apparently. Yeah, there was a decapitation scene that the MPAA didn't like. So they got rid of that. Right.
That's when they took it away from him. And then he restored his director's cut, which had the Rip Van Winkle ending, which the studio hated because they thought it was too depressing.
Too much of a
and they
bummer.
wanted him to have a win at the end.
Right. And yeah, it's I really like them all ending. I like that Bridget Fonda is in it. She was a huge fan of Evil Dead and asked to be like, do you have a part for me? And they were like, well, we could throw you in this new ending. But obviously the original ending puts him in like futuristic London, like it's like post-nuclear apocalypse or whatever. I have seen it. I haven't seen it in a while.
The other major cut is the international cut, which was what was released in theaters in Europe and other countries, other territories, where I think the ratings were less strict, where it is essentially all the bonus material that is in the director's cut, but with the theatrical ending.
Right. Right.
So there's the short version with the S-Mart ending, the long version with the Rip Van Winkle, the version that's slightly between the two lengths with the S-Mart ending, and then there's a TV cut that was one of those we just dumped all the extra footage in to fill out a longer programming block, which is the version I think no one defends other than just as a completist. It's interesting to see everything.
Right. They shot that final thing in Malibu. I mean, Raimi did not want it to be long. He handed in like a 90-minute cut, and then they lopped off like 10 minutes from that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say I watched the director's cut with the Rip Van Winkle ending, which was the one that I saw first, so it still sticks in my mind as being like my version of Army of Darkness, even though I like the S-Mart ending a lot. And it is funny how at 96 minutes you're like, this overstays its welcome a little bit.
Sure.
Like it feels a little laggy even for a short movie because the other ones are all like 81 minutes, no filler, so lean.
I like that they're all under 90.
Me too.
Love
it's and Raimi says, like, I think he has a quote here, like, I like really short films. I think 90 minutes is a great length for a picture. The kind of picture I make would work best as 60 minutes. No brain, no story, no nothing. You just like walk out having been like kicked in the head a bunch. Like, and you know, it's funny that he says that, considering that like anyone, I do feel like he eventually has suffered from like bloat, right? Like,
yeah,
Oz the Great and Powerful is a classic like 2 hour, 10-minute, you know, sort of like, oh boy, this has got to. Drag Me to Hell, though, to its credit, is a good, clean, like under 100-minute. Like that's a fun, lean horror.
Right.
Like that was him, I feel like, going back to basics.
And I think that's a case where like the difference between the unrated and theatrical cuts is like a minute. Whereas this, it's like 15 minutes. It is funny though that like the most self-indulgent kitchen sink cut of this movie is still 96 minutes long.
So another thing that was going on during all of this, Universal and Dino De Laurentiis are fighting over the fact that De Laurentiis owns rights to Hannibal Lecter's in Manhunter, right? Like he specifically owns Red Dragon. Universal owns the rest of the Lecter stuff. And when Raimi asked for more money for this movie to finish like reshoots and all that stuff, Universal held back financing and delayed the release date. That's maybe why Embeth Davidtz, you know, shot this before Schindler, like why it got delayed. Right. Delayed the release date until De Laurentiis allowed for, like, you know, to basically relinquish like the rights to Hannibal Lecter. You know what I mean? Like, you know, his specific, like, lets them greenlight sequels and stuff.
So they could make like Hannibal? Not
exactly.
Yeah.
So they could eventually make Hannibal. Yes.
Which nobody wanted.
No, but was a stupid big hit, and it took another decade, 8 years to get made. Am I wrong in this, David? Because I know we talked about this in our 2 previous Lecter episodes we've done, but wasn't it that like because he owned the Manhunter rights, he technically had first right of refusal for sequels,
and for anything to do with Hannibal Lecter, I guess. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't just that he owned that book, but he had like the default rights for the character, but he didn't hold on to them for silence. Like when they came to him, he was like, Hannibal Lecter movies don't make money. Good luck with that.
He passed on Silence of the Lambs, which is why that. Right. But then after Silence was a hit, he still had some stake. They still had to fight him.
Right.
And, you know.
Because the other 3 are all De Laurentiis productions, right?
I guess. Let's see. Hannibal. Yeah. He did produce Hannibal and Red Dragon and Hannibal Rising, of course.
Right.
In which Hannibal rose.
Just the only one he didn't produce was the one that won Best Picture.
Yeah, well, you know what? Like, leave Dino alone. He produced Army of Darkness. You like that movie?
Yeah, no, great choice. Great choice. But yes, this movie opens with, I think that's another cut difference, but the director's cut has the Bruce Campbell versus Army of Darkness title card. Right. Does theatrical have that too?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I love that. Yeah. Rather than saying like Bruce Campbell in Army of Darkness.
Yes.
You're telling everyone your lead actor's relationship to the title of the movie.
Right.
And then you start with him in Stockade.
Yes, he's been captured. They think that he is a spy for Duke Henry, right?
The Duke.
Who is played by Richard Grove, King Arthur, Lord Arthur, whatever they call him. Is played by Mark. It's all these English actors. These like, Jabba Day English actors. Ian Abercrombie, obviously.
Ian Abercrombie, yeah.
Who a blast. I mean, we all know him best from Seinfeld, right?
Yes.
Princess Sheila gets told just randomly that her brother's dead.
yes. And with the first big sequence is the pit, right? Like that's sort of the beginning of the movie.
Pit.
Yeah.
Well, you do the flashback before that, right? I mean, he has his I bet you're wondering how I ended up here.
Right.
It's just funny to drop you in to the deep end of this movie and be like, what is this modern guy doing in barracks? What is happening here? We didn't see how he was apprehended. Then you flash back to reshooting these scenes for the third time, now with Bridget Fonda, abbreviated, and then sort of just filling in a little bit like, right, he landed here in this time period, and he's just fucking been tortured since then. Everything's been going wrong. And this is his first big test.
Yes, he's thrown into the pit. He's fighting a deadite.
Two
deadites?
Two pit witches, yeah.
Yeah. Ben, you're pro pit. Do you want a town pit to throw people in?
No, I mean, that's quite extreme. I'm not of the opinion that we need to sacrifice humans for entertainment.
You just sounded
purposes.
excited about the pit, Ben. That's all.
I am excited, though, about not necessarily a killing pit, but I think having a town pit would be a great thing and a fun... Like, what did you do today? I was in a pit.
David, that was quite extreme of you to suggest that producer Ben, a man who earlier talked about his desire to have his own skeleton army, would want a pit.
Absolutely.
It's also like a trash compactor.
What would make you jump to that conclusion?
It's a spike trash compactor pit.
That's true.
It's a Sarlacc pit, and it's the trash compactor from the Death Star in one.
Right.
You have that first great bit where they throw the guy in and then the blood just like explodes out of it. Like it's a fucking splash zone at SeaWorld.
Classic Evil Dead.
And then he's up next. Yes. Just blood operating however blood needs to operate. But it's a fun action sequence. It is funny for how much like the iconic image of Ash is him in the tattered shirt with the leather straps and the chainsaw. It is only the very end of Evil Dead 2 and the very beginning of Army of Darkness.
Oh yeah. He gets rid of the chainsaw right away.
Yeah.
Even though it
changes into a new tunic.
On the poster, obviously. Iconic poster. Him with the chainsaw. He's out of gas, right? That's the great tagline.
Right. The most ripped, like they had to give him Arnold body.
The Frazetta poster you're talking about?
Yeah.
That's so good.
And there's the other one where it's like him like with his arms thrown up in the air. Like in agony, where his chest is even more extreme.
He looks like Conan the Barbarian or something. I think that's actually a confusing poster for Army of Darkness.
I do too. Yeah, but I think Dino did the Conan movies, right? He must have just gone like, I know it sells.
Well, especially
make him look like the barbarian.
I mean, have you seen the international poster? Which is
that's the one I'm talking about.
Exactly. Which it must be by that guy. Must be. Literally the guy who did those. Yeah, right. He did Red Sonja and all that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look at these.
Yeah, because on the international poster, you can't even see his face.
No.
It's just, like, he looks like He-Man.
He does look a little He-Man. What's in his other arm? It's it's a shotgun and
the chainsaw and the boomstick.
The boomstick,
right.
Yeah.
And there's no shirt. It's just the straps on the chest.
Yeah, with the sort of... he's got like straps across them, so it looks very Conan. Yeah,
like a harness.
Yes. He is celebrated as a hero because he blows up a deadite, right? Like this is the right. Well, yeah, this is where he meets Ian Abercrombie, right? Who gives him the whole Necronomicon, spiel.
Everyone hates the Duke. Embeth Davidtz thinks that he killed her brother, and Arthur hates him, and they think that Ash is a spy working in cahoots with the Duke.
It's like the Brits versus the Scots kind of deal.
Right.
Sure. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when Ash proves his worth and defeats the pit witches and gives his whole spiel that Eva knows by heart, then he's able to sort of say, like, here are my terms. I'm in charge now. Let the Duke go. Treat me like a king. And then help me get back to my time.
Yes, I want to read this wonderful quote from Ian Abercrombie, who seems like I know he's dead now, but seems like one of those classic like guy who would have some good stories, right? Like, grew up in Britain, did all kinds of stuff before he becomes like a comic actor late in life.
Yeah. Yes. And also like one of those guys who you could imagine being really ornery about the fact that he was never taken as seriously as like John Houseman or whatever. And then instead is just like, no, I did like fun comedy and genre movies and whatever. Like has that kind of pedigree, but doesn't seem self-serious.
And he voices Palpatine in the Clone Wars cartoons.
Oh.
I do know that. And he played Alfred on the weird failed Birds of Prey TV show.
Oh man, he did a fairy tale theater?
Yeah.
His career is wild if you look at it. Yeah.
He was in the Wizards of Waverly Place a lot, like late in life. Anyway, lovely quote from him about Sam Raimi. He's grounded in his roots. That's why he's surrounded by his friends. That's why he has Bruce. Sam's success is because he's very grounded and he works really hard. He delegates authority, but when it comes to bottom line, he's at the helm. He listens. He has no patience for slackers. And he's got this cherubic face like a choir boy gone wrong. That's my reference for him. I always say he reminds me of a choir boy who's done something naughty. That is Sam Raimi's. He said Sam Raimi through the eyes of Ian Abercrombie. That's all.
That's wild.
He's so good in Seinfeld. I love him in Seinfeld.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. Anyway, and he's great in this. He's sort of the Merlin figure, I guess. Right? Is kind of his vibe.
Yeah, it's just so funny. It is just kind of impossible to imagine a major studio today, even if you have someone like De Laurentiis putting up half the budget, greenlighting a movie like this where there are no stars, where you're just like, you imagine they would get someone who was on 90210 to play Sheila, or you imagine they would get someone who had been nominated for an Oscar to play the Ian Abercrombie part. And instead, it's sort of like all jobbing foreign actors and Bruce Campbell.
Yes. So he tells him, you got to go get the book, right? Go into the forest, find the Necronomicon, say these really special words.
I want to shout out the building of the hand montage.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Incredible. Those montages, it just like the budgets get, bigger, the equipment gets better, but man, that the third time around, it's so good. It's so
they
well
really
done.
Draw it out. It's so long too. That blacksmith character with the really long thing mustache is great. Yeah. And that second scene, I mean, you talked about it. We talked about earlier, but like when he's sort of luxuriating with the grapes and the women, and then that Deadite transformation happens, and he realizes like, I gotta just fucking get this thing in motion.
Side note, the trilogy of Siskel and Ebert reviews of these three movies are very funny. They're all on YouTube. But it's just basically them constantly like not liking the movies and then pretending later like they liked them, but they don't like the new one.
Oh, like for every sequel, they're like, we all loved Evil Dead 1, of course. But okay.
It's my favorite kind of phenomenon. I feel like you see that with all like horror sci-fi franchises from like respectable critics in the 80s, where they're like, how I long for the halcyon days of Friday the 13th Part 1. Right. And then you read the review and they're like, utter contemptible trash, lowest common denominator filth.
Oh, but Ebert just is really into the like that montage you're talking about, Ben, and he is talking about in Evil Dead 2 that he thinks it's an homage to a Taxi Driver.
Oh, interesting.
That's what he's doing. And he really leans into like the slapstick stuff. Siskel is really grouchy about the movies. He gets really bad.
It's just funny that this movie like has totally abandoned horror from its DNA outside of it being a monster movie, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's slapstick adventure now with like a monster sort of covering.
Yeah. Like when you finally meet the Army of Darkness in the last like 20 minutes, they're not scary. They're the opposite of scary.
No, and Evil Dead 2 is straddling that line in a really interesting way. And in this one, they're never positioning anything as being scary.
No, this film has, right. This is a consistently, the scares are down with everyone in this series. That's the haunted forest at this point in this movie is when you would like rub your hands together with glee, with like, oh great, like a lot of fun stuff is about to happen.
They're playing Freebird. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, it's probably my favorite part of the movie. All that. Like, the little guys, all the Ash stuff here.
It is funny for how big the final like third of this movie gets, that it doesn't get any better than him just fucking alone in a shed.
Oh yeah,
I know.
Oh, and bad Ash like hanging off of him, like in your background, David. Evil Ash. Oh, so
and even Ash. Like you put aside how technically complicated it is to do this kind of acting, it's also just hard to do multiple weeks of responding to nothing.
It probably helps you play crazy, though, right? Helps you if you're like, if you're doing the Bruce Campbell thing, if you're trying to act like you're going mad, acting against nothing.
There's a great quote that JJ pulled up here from If Shins Could Kill, the book we discussed at length in the Evil Dead 2 episode. His quote was, he said, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, those numbers barked out via megaphone by an effects assistant, all correlated with specific movements of an animated skeleton that I had to interact with, in this case during a sword fight. At 34, I had to arrive at a critical mark on the floor. At 35, I turned towards a specific spot on the rear screen since I couldn't actually see the skeleton. At 36, I duck a swipe from the skeleton. As I rose, a live-action puppet skeleton attacked me from behind. I'd have about 2.5 seconds to fend him off before number 40 when I take a swing at the animated skeleton. By 42, the beast would be defeated and I'd be off to the next fight. So it really is like, it's like fucking like musical choreography. But you add into that, there's so many ways that the effects can go wrong, that the gags can go wrong, even if he gets it right. And then when you get to a sequence like him with the mini Ashes, what he's reacting to is like 5 other performances that he had to give. That all needed to interact with each other.
Oh, God, he's amazing.
He's amazing.
He is amazing, and it's like balletic what he's doing.
Yes,
it kind of makes sense to me that this was kind of in a way his intro or his audition for like television, like lower budget. Action, like Briscoe County Jr.
Right.
And Hercules,
and Xena and Hercules. Yeah.
That it's all this stuff, but I guess at this point he was such a pro that I bet he could just run in, do literally anything, and would be it would probably be easier than what he had to do in this movie. That's what I'm saying.
It is so funny that those shows broke out so much bigger in the popular culture than any of his movies, and that's running concurrent with him sort of making this pivot to like more adult respectable films. And they like those shows become these huge money makers that have like taken his style and his sort of format and applied it to like a formula and a medium perhaps that was like more accessible to children and genre fans. And then right when it felt like the transformation had been complete, where it's like one side of Sam Raimi's persona is like mogul and he's got this whole thing running, and now he's become a respectable like movie star director for adult dramas and thrillers and stuff. Then like Spider-Man comes around and it's like you're back in. Now we're putting everything back together again.
Yeah. But the TV side is kind of where he gets to hide Bruce for a while.
Yes.
Right.
It's like his terrarium for Bruce.
Yeah.
He recently was in Lodge 49, right? People really praised his work on that show.
So good. He's so good on that. And it's so perfect when he shows up. You're like, of course it's Bruce Campbell. And then he's just incredible on it. He's so funny.
I mean, obviously he did Ash vs. Evil Dead. I'm wondering, like, what I need more Bruce lately. Like, give me more of that.
You're forgetting 111 episodes of Burn Notice, which also resulted.
I'm not forgetting. He was great on that show. I mean, that show is a while ago now, but yeah.
He did a Burn Notice spin-off prequel, right?
Did he? Oh, yes. Burn Notice, The Fall of Sam Axe.
Thank you.
That was a TV movie, but yes.
Yes.
And no, I look, Burn Notice is one of those shows that I never watched consistently at all, but I think I may have lived with someone who watched it at some point. Something like it was occasionally on, and every time I would be like, Campbell's eaten. Like, if nothing else, Bruce Campbell knows exactly what he's doing on this thing. But yeah, he was an old secret agent in want to say Miami, right?
Yeah, I remember a lot of Hawaiian shirts.
Yeah, it was Miami. It was that classic USA thing where they were like, plot schmott, what beachside location will this be set in? Like, he's a sports doctor. Fine, I don't care. Is it in the Hamptons? Okay, good. Green light. Like, please continue. Like, that's fine.
He must have had the best fucking time working on that show. Like, can you think about just Bruce
Campbell?
You get to be elder statesman. You're the fucking cocky, confident, like know-it-all guy.
Doesn't he feel like someone who walks into a hotel and has a whole, like, knows exactly how to be in a hotel because he's like king of the convention? Miami, it's like Hotel City. The guy was probably having so much fun in the hotels of Miami.
And he lives in the Rogue Valley. He lives like where my mom lives in Ashland, Oregon. He lives like outside Medford. So he basically like lives in like a weird part of Oregon where he can like,
that's cool.
Yeah, like he
ride
can
horses.
Ride horses. He could probably whitewater raft around or whatever. And then he flies to Miami, stays in a cool hotel, and does Burn Notice.
It's pretty nice.
Bruce
Campbell. I mean, I think I've said this, but every single convention that I've either worked at or gone to as a fan when he was there, and low bar what I'm about to say, he's so far and away the best dressed person in the entire vicinity. Like, he dresses up for each one of those things like it's the fucking prom.
Oh, his wife's a costume designer.
Really? This makes so much sense. Because he's got these suits that look like they're custom made. He's got shiny, almost Elvis-y suits.
That's cool. I didn't know his wife was, and he married her right around Army of Darkness time. They got married in 1991.
Cool.
Yeah, and she worked on this movie. In fact, she is. Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, he goes to get that neck. He fucks up KLAATU Barada Nikto, right? He can't. He doesn't say it right. Classic Ben moment. He didn't read the last. It's like when my entire class went to see the stage production of Nicholas Nickleby because we were reading the book. And you know how like Nicholas Nickleby, the play is like 7 hours long, or like you have to see it all day.
No, I don't know, but
well, all right,
keep going.
At the end, when the big twist was revealed, my entire class gasped, like revealing that no one had finished Nicholas Nickleby. Everyone actually was surprised.
Oh, that's funny.
That's
right.
Oh, you're
and the
all
teachers were so
trouble.
bad. Right, yes.
That's so
we were like,
keep it inside.
I don't actually want to spoil Nicholas Nickleby for anyone on this podcast, but it has a big twist at the end. And we were all like, oh my God. Like, anyway.
I own the Roger Rees DVD of the play, but I have not watched it. So now I might.
I highly recommend it. It is very much a stage experience, like it's done in this very cool way, but I bet you it's like, the production is cool. And obviously that was Roger Rees's, that was what made him, right?
It's the filmed
famous
play. Like they filmed the stage version of it. So.
The National or the RS. Yeah. It's 8.5 hours long. That's how long it was.
Jesus.
Right. Yeah. But you had to you went and you had dinner in the middle. That was like how it was done.
It's like Gats.
Like Gats, which I also saw.
Or Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, 3 of the most important works of dramatic literature.
Exactly. 3 Tony-winning things. I don't think Gats won a Tony.
I love that show, when it got announced, she was like, it has to be 2 parts. You don't understand. It has to be 2 separate shows. It's just, there's no way to contain the story in one night. And then the thing shuts down for the pandemic for like fucking 15 months. And she's like, yeah, I came up with some cuts. It's now one 90-minute show.
Look, well, on Broadway, it is now one show. And in London, you can see it as 2 shows. I will say, my brother, who is a Cursed Child mega fan, says the one show version of it is like completely awful. Like it only works as 2 shows. Yeah.
I like the merch. You need it for the merch. You need to do the merch change. I know other spoilies, but there's a merch change that happens midway through, and if you don't get that, it's not cool. You got to do a transition.
You're talking my language now.
Yeah. That show is it is almost like Podcast the Ride material and how, Anyway, different podcast. So
it's in the fucking Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark theater.
Oh yeah.
Is it? That makes sense because they would have had to use the biggest. That was the whole point of Turn Off the Dark, right? They needed the absolute biggest space possible.
I forget what that theater is. It was the American Airlines Theater or whatever. They should call it the Spider-Man Theater. They should name it after Spider-Man, like he was August Wilson or whatever.
And they should have a statue of Spider-Man outside of it, I think.
They should. There should be an Al Hirschfeld of Spider-Man with a broken back.
People have to fly. You have to fly things. If you have to fly things, you go to that theater.
You could at that theater.
So he, because he fucks up, right? He raises the Army of Darkness, right? That's it. And then the last half hour is just the battle.
Well, wait, come on. I love that.
I'm not saying we're done. I'm just saying like that. That's the rest of the plot. Yada yada.
Yeah, I would do the same thing too.
Yes.
Even if I did raise the dead, I would be like, yeah, everything was fine.
You would not own up.
Nothing
to it.
really came up. Can you send me back to my time? Yeah, nothing to report. Straightforward.
But it's the point you made, Eva, of like, it's incredible how much this movie leans into him being an asshole, where the first two movies he was like a goof, right? And especially with the fish out of water premise of this movie, there's a version of it where you're like, he's like a modern guy who's in over his head and he's panicking, right? And the comedy comes from him trying to like keep it under control, but he's like a nebbish or whatever. And in this, he just fucks up with such arrogance and then comes in and is like, yeah, no, I got this. I can talk my way through this. And then when things go wrong, he's like defensive that people are angry at him for fucking up and lying about it.
Yeah. Oh, it's just like the entire way they justify it is like this guy works at like a Walmart and he thinks
he's a stock boy.
and he's an asshole about that too, that he brags to these medieval people about the Walmart he works at.
But I do think it's almost like, like he's like this weird anti-Ripley, where like Ripley becomes sort of like more focused and sort of like primal and heroic the more she like survives all these alien attacks. And like you said, Ash just gets broken. Like it just becomes bravado in the place of anything else because all of his emotions have just been like stomped out.
Yeah. The sweet beta Ash from the first one who hid the little necklace and he's dead. He's gone.
He's such a goofus in the early movies.
Right. He doesn't really have this energy in either. I mean, certainly not in the first one, right? But in the second one of the sort of like, all right, I got this. Like, he's not like that in Evil Dead 2 at all, right?
No.
He's a little bit like of a
at
dick when the people show up at the cabin.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
At that point, he's cut his hand off and he's like, shut up. No one's going anywhere. But this is a new Ash.
Right. He's more badass there than he is like uncouth in this,
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Fancy Pants. Like, what the fuck? That's the first thing he says to anybody.
Right. He's got like asshole like gym coach energy in this.
Yeah. He's a bully.
Right. He's a bully who like never got over being the high school quarterback. He still wants to big time everyone, but with like, the slickness of a used car salesman. No, I'm sympathetic.
I mean, I still love him. He's still good, right?
Yeah. Bully Ash. It's great. It's final Ash form until the video games and TV shows.
I mean, the last line of the movie is him saying "Hail to the King,"
and kissing a strange woman.
Yeah, give me some sugar, baby.
He's gonna have to kill her.
I'm just like looking at these lines. Yo, she bitch, let's go. Like they're just so blunt.
Do you think that is essential to Ash's character, Eva? Like, no matter who he falls in love with, they will eventually turn into a monster he has to decapitate or whatever.
Yeah, that's his curse. That's like the cosmic horror of Evil Dead, right? Because it's like that's the Lovecraftian horror. Is like you fall in love, you have to decapitate your girlfriend, and then she makes fun of you,
right,
with her head forever until you move to a new location.
He's always going to be a badass hero, but he will always be essentially like yelled at by his girlfriend corpse. That's interesting.
He will always have to steer the helicopter car out of the way from chopping his girlfriend into a million parts.
Yes.
Well, but then why doesn't he bring, Sheila with him, I guess, is my question.
Well,
he just got something going on here.
Yeah, but it's just pillow talk, baby. Like, I think this new Ash can't be tied down. So maybe the new girl will survive because now Ash just like, he's a fuckboy, right?
But maybe he has to be. He's the one guy who actually is like, I have to be a fuckboy. If it gets serious with me, you're going to turn into a monster. You don't want this.
If I buy you jewelry...
Right, exactly.
You don't want to know what the next 5 things will happen to you. but you end up in hell.
You end up in hell, but also it's kind of funny. It's kind of, it's kind of got like a sort of slapstick vibe. It's sort of cartoony and cool, but you will be dead.
You'll be horny, but dead.
Yeah, horny with great bits, but very dead.
It is funny, like, I mean, Raimi still oversaw the reshoots when they did the new ending and other stuff. It wasn't his
they just
choice.
had like different crew or whatever, and they had to like rush it. Yeah.
But it wasn't something, I mean, he was told he had to come up with a new ending, but it was an ending that he designed. And he's always said, when people ask, like, canonically, which is the definitive ending? Like, what for you do you think is the true fate of Ash? And Ash versus Evil Dead makes it the S-Mart ending. But up until that point, he was like, I just think it's kind of appropriate that this guy has like two alternate realities. And one of them is just he suffers more, and the other one is like a parody of an action movie.
Right. Yeah, he gets a break, but it's almost like you can just see the seams of his world now. He just seems like he's in a movie. Yeah.
There's a Twilight Zone ending that's like the tragic irony, and then there's the other ending that is like the joke is that he gets his hero moment, but once again he's a 40-year-old stock boy. Like nothing about this is actually cool. And a thing I like that the TV show does is it's like they could have had so much happen to Ash in the like 20 years in between, and they're like, no, he's still working at the store. He's not even like really risen through the ranks that much. He still has the same amount of arrogance. He tells everyone all these things he used to do, but it's just like, yeah, then why are you working at a fucking S-Mart, dude?
Yeah. But he also like the other, I mean, it is like him being tortured in the future, or he's the king. He's a badass. He's getting to get laid. He killed that Evil Dead, but the Evil Dead are never going to stop coming for Ash. I think that's the other implied ending is like, he didn't just bring back one Evil Dead. He fucked up the thing, and they're always going to come. They're always going to come for Ash.
Yes, and also even in the realities where he's a hero and he's a badass, never, always more in his own mind than in the eyes of others. Like it becomes almost like a defensive posture.
Yeah.
To mask like the sadness of like, yes, right. Anyone he ever loves is going to lose him and then fuck with him.
Especially, again, the Deadites have no rules. When and how they pop up is, kind of whatever. How they spread or how they infect is never really clear. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's just
it's like a bully picking on a kid because them crying is funniest. Right? It's just like, it's not this kid's the dorkiest, but like he reacts the worst.
Or it's like all the nerds got powerful and are picking on the bully. Like they got the bully trapped and they're like fucking torturing him because they're like, you think you're so fucking handsome.
Yes.
And we're going to just punch you and punch you and punch you forever.
Which is also like the subtext of the whole franchise is like, obviously Bruce Campbell is a mensch and their dear friend, but it does kind of like, here are all the like nerdy sweet boys who are like, this fucking avuncular jock wants to play with us.
Yeah, from high school. Like our friend from high school, we're gonna, yeah.
If he wants to like get on our level, then he has to punch himself in that pretty face.
Yes.
That moment when what is it? I think it's the mini Ashes knock him down onto like the welding table, like the iron, and his face is burning, and then he has to take like the little shovel and like pry his face off the table like it's a flapjack.
I'm doing what you were doing, Griff. Now I'm just looking at the quotes from IMDb. You got real ugly. Come get some. Give me some sugar, baby. Like all this stuff. I am now locking into Axe's more jockey energy with this one.
I actually just like ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave the store. That might be my favorite.
This is another one that's incredible because I can't even track the internal logic of it. When he's being knocked around by the mini Ashes and he says, all right, I'll crush each and every last one of you. I'll squash you so hard you'll have to look down to look up.
That's like a Daffy Duck thing to say.
Yes.
And he really is like Daffy Duck getting his beak blown around to the front of his head.
All three of these movies are like Duck 'em Up. Like the ultimate part of the comedy is imagining Sam Raimi giggling behind the camera.
Yeah, what he's going to do to Bruce and how much Bruce is going to hate shooting it.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Ben mentioned, the fucking bringing in a Mad Max car to top everything off.
Yeah, well, he's got his Delta 88, of course, the classic Sam Raimi car. It's in all his movies, right, Griff? That's his thing. It's his Hitchcock cameo thing, right?
It's Uncle Ben's car in Spider-Man.
Wait, one more I just remembered is when Sheila knits him a gift. He goes, "Good, I could use a horse blanket." So mean. Yeah.
He's a good.
He ends up kissing her, like a kind of against her will.
Maybe
his seduction of her is insane. Because in the director's cut too, it's a full sex scene. Like goes from that kiss to then just like a full like Cinemax. Like not that's explicit, but that kind of like gauzy lighting, them in silhouette by candle.
Oh, I gotta watch this director's cut now.
It's good. I think the theatrical
attention.
cut is just smoother.
right. And it's what you're used to, so the director's cut might feel lumpier because of that.
Yeah,
I guess.
But it's fun to watch, just like every additional idea and gag and shot and all that stuff.
I wanted to say the mask for the like leader of the Deadites, whatever that design. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
it's great. It's so good.
Is that also Ash? Is that the Ash that he buried?
Right.
So is Bruce Campbell also playing that?
Correct.
He's playing. Oh God.
So when he has a day off from playing the hero of the movie, he then has to undergo like 4 hours of prosthetic makeup.
Penguin level.
It's incredible, and I love the weird puppet skeleton Evil Ash at the end as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've lavished so much praise on him, but I guess this is us saying it's not like he's not going to pop up in other Raimis, but it's always small roles, right? Like he never has a big role with Raimi after this. I'm just triple checking that, but yeah, right?
Was this the biggest flop? Like,
it wasn't a flop exactly, but it underperformed. We'll get to the box office game in a second, but like it made basically its budget back, and I think Universal wanted it more to do at least like 20 to 30 million. You know, like a little more
numbers.
like Darkman. Yeah.
The weird thing I remember reading either Campbell or Raimi talk about in an interview was like 2 or 3 years after this movie came out, maybe even a little bit later, Universal called them up and was like, the home video numbers on this movie are like bizarrely strong. Right. Like this thing has finally gone into profit many times over. Would you guys be interested in doing a direct-to-video Army of Darkness 2? And they were like, Army of Darkness is Evil Dead 3. What do you mean Army of Darkness 2? And they didn't know. Like whoever that person was at Universal was just like, we have this bizarre one-off movie that performs really well on home video. We can't stop re-releasing it. Why haven't we done another one of these? But that's sort of more the missed opportunity for me is like, I don't understand why Bruce Campbell didn't get to make like 3 more movies like this. Yeah. You know, even if it wasn't with Raimi, it's like there should have been guys who were sort of like Raimi acolytes directing like, can you make an $8 million Bruce Campbell is like a goofball asshole fighting some genre element?
Like a better Trauma. There should have been just like a Trauma for Bruce Campbell movies.
Right. Full Moon. Like I was just thinking about all these sorts of like studios like that really made their money on home video and just doing it at like maybe not half of this budget, which would still be 20 times more than a Toxic Avenger. But just make the movies with him as this guy, even if it's not Ash, like just kind of the movie star archetype that he's created for himself. I wish there was just more of these, you know?
I'm also surprised that all those guys that wrote on Briscoe County, like J.J. Abrams and stuff, didn't use him more.
Like as they got big, like the Carlton Cuse, those guys, right? Yeah. It's a fair point. I mean, it's the Bruce Campbell thing of people cheerfully taken for granted, I guess. Of like, well, you're Bruce Campbell,
you'll be fine.
You're doing great. Yeah. And maybe that's true, and maybe he is doing fine, and he doesn't want, and obviously he found TV in the '90s, and he like is sort of a pioneer on that front in a weird way. Like, but yeah, maybe Bruce Campbell's sitting there thinking like, why didn't I get to do X, Y, Z? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's just Raimi obviously loves his friends. He puts Bruce Campbell in lots of other movies, but he never does this again with him.
But I think I was wrong about J.J. Abrams. It was just Carlton.
It's just Carlton Cuse, but there is someone else. I mean, like, well, obviously Carlton Cuse is the big thing about that movie, but yeah, maybe that is it. I don't know. That's the funniest part though with Lost is like, didn't Damon Lindelof work on like Nash Bridges or whatever? Like,
yeah, well, that was Carlton Cuse's show too.
Right, that was it. Right, that was how they knew each other. And like, it's just funny that Abrams was such a big guy, and he creates the show, and he's like, yeah, let me get my friend from Nash Bridges, and he's gonna get his friend from Nash Bridges, and they'll run like the most heady like sci-fi work on TV in a generation that like changes how people think about this stuff.
I'm saying, like, get Campbell on the island, you doofuses. Arrgh.
I know. Just, it feels like there is still so much untapped that the guy can do. And it's one of those things where you, like, can't be totally, like, angry about it because he has had a robust career and he's done all sorts of different things. But you do watch something like this and you're like, no one ever lets him, like, be a 5-tool player to the same degree that Raimi did.
Right.
Just appreciating how what a comic genius he is.
Yes.
Which I feel like he got the 3 movies to like prove himself more and more each time. And then by this one it's purely just he is a like physical comedy. And he's all types of comedy, but like master of comedy.
Ben
Griff.
Mubi.
Oh my God, Mubi.
Our old friend. We got an old friends lineup today with our sponsors on this episode.
Yeah, Mubi has been sponsoring the show for a while. I mean, it's an incredible curated streaming service that shows exceptional films from around the globe. The blue marble we call planet Earth.
The blue marble. You can watch some of these talky pictures and even some silent ones on Mubi.com. You can get comfy with all the clothes you ordered with the promo codes we gave you earlier in the episode, and you can cuddle up by the screen, the warm glow of the screen, and watch some things on Mubi. God, here's a cool little festival that Mubi has going on right now. Fables, Folklore, Futurism, Visionary Hungarian Animations. These look wild, Ben. This looks like some real Ben shit. There's one called Horse in the House. There's one called Scenes with Beans, which appears to be stop motion animation done with beans.
That's so
like
cool.
Beans are the character. There's one called Gobble Gobble, where there's a man in a yellow and white suit who's the size of a building. I like all of this. What else do we have here? 35 Shots of Rum. The great Claire Denis movie. That's part of a little festival called Growing Pains Coming of Age Films. Voyage of Time, the IMAX documentary. This was Terrence Malick's IMAX documentary, Ben. At the same time that Terrence Malick was doing Tree of Life, you know how there's the whole sort of like creation of the universe sequence? He like siphoned some of that budget to make an IMAX film of just like the special effects.
Oh shit. Okay, I would love to see that.
It played in IMAX for like 2 days. It barely got a release, and it has never been available on home video, and I cannot believe it is now streaming on Mubi. It's 46 minutes long of just some trippy Terrence Malick shit narrated by Brad Pitt.
That's so cool.
This is very exciting. I can't believe I didn't know this was on here. This is the point. You open up Mubi, and you see some amazing stuff, okay?
Hand selected.
They premiere a new film every single day.
I think we can all relate to the experience sitting down in front of your television set.
Yes.
Hitting power, on your remote control. And
Absolutely.
You're like, who am I? What am I doing? Help. I'm lost.
Yes.
And then you just cycle through menus for a long time. And you never pick something that you really like. You settle. And in this case, now someone picks for friggin' ass.
Well, this is the thing. Mubi is like all killer, no filler. It's hand selected. There's no junk filling up space. You just look. I can stop talking because you should just open up a window yourself and explore for yourself. Okay.
Okay.
But Ben.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just looking for myself. What's up?
No, look for yourself. Look for yourself. I just want to give you a little offer.
Yeah?
You can try Mubi for free for 30 days at Mubi.com/check. That's MUBI.com/check for a whole month of great cinema for free. 30 free days of Mubi is like an entire semester at film school.
That rules. Mubi.com/check.
Yep. Bye. JJ pulled this up in the dossier. Like, most of the reviews for this movie were bizarrely negative.
Well,
and
it's
like,
what Eva's saying about the Eberts, where they were mad again that it's not Evil Dead 2, even though they were probably not that nice about Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, they weren't.
Right. Entertainment Weekly gave it a C+, and their line was, "The spoofy cast of thousands looks a little too much like a crew of bland Hollywood extras. By the time Army of Darkness turns into a retread of Jason and the Argonauts, featuring an army of fighting skeletons, the film has fallen into a ditch between parody and spectacle." And I'm like, you're saying this as a negative?
Yeah.
And also, yeah, that sounds like a cool ditch to be in.
Right, do you not understand? Like, that's the exact thing the movie's consciously doing. But then JJ pulled up, this is one of the only, like, fully positive reviews was Peter Rayner in the LA Times. And he has this line that's just such a good explanation of the Campbell magic, where he says, he's the perfect actor for Raimi because he's both joke and in-joke. He toys with his stalwartness. Army of Darkness is mostly a terrific piece of mindlessness that may not sound like such a great recommendation until you drop in on some of this season's high-minded clunkers. And that 2 point of just like, right, that's this line that Bruce toes that almost no one else has such control over. And when you add in the technical challenges of the movie itself, it becomes even more impressive. But also, like, his exact point where it's like, you're fucking ragging on Army of Darkness. What are the, like, blockbusters that you're giving an easy pass to that same year?
I think it's...
Yeah,
I don't know.
Calling something a retread of Jason and the Argonauts in the 90s, it's like what the fuck? I can like smell, I can like hear the opera glasses like getting pushed up the nose. Like,
your fucking cynicism.
That's called an homage. That's not a retread. Like, if it's a movie from that long ago, you're honoring it. You're not just like ripping it off. We're ripping off Jason and the Argonauts. Like,
this stupid movie doesn't know whether it's a parody or a spectacle. And I'm like, no, maybe it does. Maybe it's playing with that exact balance.
Maybe you don't know.
Yeah, maybe you should eat a turd, critics of 1993.
I think that's just a particular... No, Griff, it's like those early 90s, it's the dawn of like main, indie cinema, right? And all this intelligent stuff is suddenly flooding theaters. And I think it's just like the height of hold your nose, criticism of like, schlock and blockbusters and right. And like this kind of cartoony stuff, right? I don't want to paint with a broad brush. That's how I feel like a lot of this, a lot of the sort of critical establishment was feeling post 80s, right? Post, guns and brawn and a lot of like dumb blockbusters.
I'm looking for like a counterpoint here, right?
I mean, I don't like the guy who wrote the EW review. I'm not going to say his name right now.
We're not going to say it. We don't need to say it.
He's not someone I like.
Sure.
So whatever.
I think if you're not paying attention,
Vladimir Putin.
I feel like if you're not paying attention and you're not in on the joke, you could think Army of Darkness was like a Steven Seagal-esque a shitty
pastiche. Yeah, right. Yes.
Or just bad action.
It's
movie.
just
definitely.
It is wild to me that like I was looking for a direct counterpoint, but a Cliffhanger comes out like 3 months after this, right? And is one of like the highest grossing movies of the year. And the critical response to it is kind of like, yeah, it's like a good version of that shitty, stupid stuff. Like everyone kind of gave it this sort of like, it's dumb, obviously, but it's like rarefied dumb.
It's the same story as Eva mentioned, Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson and Sam Raimi have very similar trajectories.
Yes.
Where they are masters of trash for years. Critics don't really like their movies when they come out, and then when the next movie comes out, critics are like, this guy used to be good, this one's not that great, you know, like that's the story over and over. And then in the early 2000s they reinvent mainstream cinema. Like, yeah, it's so the two of them basically, and that's what's coming up. But obviously Raimi is clearly feels burned by both this and Darkman. Maybe not quite. I mean, Darkman did better than this, but like just not quite going over as he would have hoped.
Yeah.
And then Hudsucker Proxy after this being the sort of like, oh, this is the bad Coen's movie, even though that movie rules. And
but I think that sticks to him, that like his friends have gone legit and become so respected, and they're finally doing their big collaboration, and it's the first of their movies to like be greeted with a resounding thud.
I feel like maybe the timeline isn't quite right, but I feel like The Frighteners and Quick and the Dead were both completely rejected.
Love Frighteners. Yeah.
And they're both
but
incredible movies.
That's exactly right. Those are both the sort of mid-90s, okay, here's a real budget, do something for me. And both are kind of just spurned at the time. And just in general, everything Raimi does in between Army of Darkness and Spider-Man feels like him grasping at legitimacy. Yeah. And I think all of the movies we're about to discuss are varying levels of good, but he's never quite getting clearly like this sort of recognition he wants. And then he's like, fine, I guess, you know, then he makes Spider-Man, and then everything is very different after that.
It was what you said. It's that everything that was not taken seriously at the time was canonized and also had become so profitable over the course of a decade. The cults for all these things have become so valuable that he like became suddenly a choice of a guy to take over a major franchise for movies that were kind of disregarded when they came out. I'm just, I'm looking at the cliffhanger review that Ebert wrote, right? So the same year, I'm just sorry, but this feels like such a good counterpoint of like, that was the biggest dumb action movie of that year, right?
Sure.
You have things like In the Line of Fire and Fugitive that are more high-minded that same year, right? But like Cliffhanger, everyone who likes it admits that it's junk, right? And Ebert's third paragraph, he's talking about how Stallone's had a bad run and all the movies have flopped, and everyone's like viewing this film with a sense of urgency of, is this his final test? And he says, my guess is that it won't flop because it delivers precisely what it promises. It's big budget extravaganza with a lot of stunts and special effects, starring Stallone as professional da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then his next line is true. There's not a moment in the plot that I could believe. That didn't bother me for an instant. So he's saying, like, this thing is stupid. It's stupid and it makes no sense, but it is delivering the exact thing audiences are asking for. It's delivering on the promise. And I think the Army of Darkness
Ebert, he would have a yardstick for every different yardstick for every movie.
Which I appreciate about him. I enjoy that. And I enjoy, like, him giving movies that sort of display of kindness. But I do think part of this movie's the confusion it was greeted with is just like, what is the tone of this thing? What is this? Versus something like Cliffhanger, where it's like, we know it's dumb and we're delivering exactly this kind of dumb movie you've seen before, and critics are like, thank you, 6 out of 10, it's stupid. Army of Darkness, they're like, what is this weird pastiche? And I think back to the great Ed Solomon, incredible screenwriter, was on the George Lucas talk show, and he was talking about the process of working on Men in Black, which was like a very torturous film, right? That David, you and I often talk about in terms of being a masterpiece, especially for like films of that size. And I got Tommy Lee Jones on board. I think he signed on before they had Will Smith, and he wanted to go out to dinner with Ed Solomon and maybe Sonnenfeld as well. And they're like having their steak dinner. Tommy Lee Jones seemingly in the same sort of mood that he was when he told Jim Carrey that he wouldn't sanction his buffoonery. And they're like, this is like a celebratory dinner. We roped a big Academy Award-winning movie star. And Tommy Lee Jones is just kind of like scowling. And then he looks up at Ed Solomon at one point and he goes, so what is it? And he goes, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you have to rewrite the script. Is it a comedy or is it a sci-fi movie?
Right.
And he goes, it's both. And he goes, it can't be both. You have to pick one, asshole. And it does feel like that's how critics kind of responded to this movie.
Right. Well,
but
you have to pick one, asshole.
But they're also like giving credit to Sylvester Stallone that they would never give to Bruce Campbell.
No.
And they're
like,
me
Stallone
mad.
knows what kind of movie star he is.
After all those years, I guess he'd earned that respect, if you can call it that. I don't know.
The benefit of the doubt. It's weird.
Yes.
He's been doing Rambos.
I know. That's the reason I wish he had just gotten to make like 3 more of these. Not Ash movies, but Bruce Campbell movie star films within the studio system at a lower budget. So that at least like his persona could have solidified to a point where critics are like, well, we know what Bruce Campbell does. It's that kind of vibe.
Right. Let's play the box office game, Griffin.
Let's play the box office game.
Okay.
Ooh.
Eva, if you know the format here, we're going to talk about the box office for February 19th, 1993, which is when Army of Darkness opened.
David, do you know what else happens on that day?
On February 19th, 1993? No. What happens?
It's my birthday.
Oh, that's right. Of course. Well, you would have been 4 years old? In 1993? Is that right? You were born in 89, right?
Yes, I would have been 4 years old. Yep.
4 years old. You probably did not see Army of Darkness in theaters, but maybe you saw some of these other films.
No, I saw it in theaters.
Oh, yeah,
I saw
sure. This film opened number 6 at the box office to $4 million. It made 11.5 total. So a little underwhelming for Universal.
And it's kind of a February dump after it was supposed to be a summer release that got delayed because of the Hannibal shit.
It was set for July 92, and so it's coming out a lot later. Right. So number 6. So it's not in the top 5. Number 1, however, is a comedy in its second week of release, a classic.
You'd say you would say a classic?
Yes. One of the greats.
You're being sincere.
Yes, I am. Very sincere. I love this movie. It's very good. I'm sure you love it too. It stars one of your favorite actors.
Is it a Steve Martin movie?
Nope.
Oh, is it Groundhog Day?
It's Groundhog Day with Bill
Murray.
Murray.
It had
pretty
to
good
be.
movie.
It had to be. February. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty great movie.
Eva, do you like Groundhog Day?
Love Groundhog Day.
Who doesn't like Groundhog Day?
Superlative film.
Yes.
I do love that Ash kind of is stuck in a Groundhog Day thing of like
a little bit.
The first act of every Evil Dead movie having to put him through the same events over and over again.
Cosmic horror, man.
Yeah. Yep.
It is. Yeah. It is. Okay. It is staggering to think about the implications of Groundhog Day all the time. It's so good. Okay. Number 2 at the box office is a film that I'm pretty sure if I didn't see it in theaters, I saw it pretty soon after. It's an adventure film, comedy, sort of. It's about animals.
Ooh.
Is it Homeward Bound?
Yes. Can you give me the subtitle?
The Incredible Journey.
Yes. The first Homeward Bound. Of course, the second one, they got lost in San Francisco. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. I definitely saw that in theaters. Yeah.
That's the one with the dog and the cat.
2 dogs, 1 cat. Sally Field, Donna Meche, Michael J. Fox.
That's correct.
Dude, that shit's good.
Yeah, that shit rules.
That shit fucks, to be
honest.
Does
it? Reboot.
I haven't watched it since I was a kid, but I thought it was really cool when I was like fucking
Chance the dog.
7.
Badass.
I thought it was so cool when I was a kid. I just do their mouths move? Do they do the like the full or is it just right? They're just sort of
They do like Garfield style.
It's like Milo and Otis. Right. They just think they can telepathically speak to each other.
Yes, it rules.
Yeah, it does.
Isn't Homeward Bound 2 The Adventures of Yellow Dog?
No,
The Adventures of Yellow Dog is something else. What is that? What is Far From Home? Far From Home.
Oh man, so close.
The Adventures of Yellow Dog. But that was another one. There were so many of these kinds of movies because there's the Great Panda Adventure as well,
there's
right?
Benji's. There's a ton of Benji's.
Benji, yeah.
Benji the Hunted.
Just so much, I guess. It must have been so annoying to make these fucking movies with these animals, right?
And
Homeward Bound is a remake.
Oh,
Bart the Bear.
We've talked about Bart the Bear.
But he's in Homeward Bound as well.
Is he? Does he threaten them at some point?
Does he get the and Bart the Bear as Bear?
He certainly is in Homeward Bound, yes.
Homeward Bound is a remake of a 60s live-action Disney movie called The Incredible Journey, which is why it has that subtitle, which was, I think, Disney's sort of response to Milo and Otis. When that like first wave of like Benji, Milo and Otis, Incredible Journey, whatever. And then it felt like that was like they sort of let that lie for 30 years because they were like, these things are a pain in the ass to make, right? Maybe we don't need to do this. And then the 90s roaring back to life.
Snow Dogs.
The final moment, Snow
Air
Dogs.
Bud.
Well, that's when we start to
that's
tiptoe
later.
into like, can we use CGI?
Yeah,
Do we not have
okay.
to put fucking real dogs in front of camera? But that's the end of that run. That's like late 90s, early 2000s is the end.
Well, so Homeward Bound is number 2. It's
Okay.
On its way to a healthy $41 million at the box office. Number 3 is a costume drama period film. It's set in America, though, not British.
Okay.
And it's an adaptation of a famous French story.
Is it Dangerous Liaisons?
Not Dangerous Liaisons.
Oh, wait. It's a French story. Hold on.
French. It's a remake of a French film.
It's a remake of a French film.
Yep.
It's
It's not a good movie. It's not well regarded. This is not.
It's not Diabolique, is it?
No. It's period. It's set
Right.
after the
What am I
Civil War.
It's set after the Civil War. It's a remake of a French film,
Yeah.
but it's set in the United States.
Yep. It's set in Tennessee. I'll give you
French
the
movie.
basic premise if you want it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking also about like a period drama that's released in February rather
That's
than
the
an
thing.
Oscar season.
That's how
Right.
you can smell the stink
That's
on this
what's
one.
telling.
It's a soldier returns home from war. The wife
Okay.
begins to suspect that he is an imposter. It's a Return of Martin Gare situation.
Weird.
Yes.
And this movie's a stinker. Does it have big stars in it?
Yeah, 2 big stars.
2 big stars. Civil War, Imposter, America, remake of French movie. What about the director?
John Emile, of course. The
Oh.
man only makes hits. Copycat, Entrapment,
Yeah.
The Core.
Yeah. Fuck.
The Man Who
Okay,
Meets in
'cause
the Middle, of course, which we've
I
covered on
wa-
this podcast.
I watched The Core for the first
Classic.
time recently.
Sure.
That movie fucking rips.
Yeah.
I
fair
was
enough.
like so disappointed with Moonfall that someone
That
recommended The Core to me.
Right. You wanted something with that energy. Yeah.
Right. Which like The Core, if it came out today, would win Best Picture.
Sure.
But I looked at fucking John Emile's filmography after
Yeah.
watching The Core. So I've looked at the name of this fucking movie in the last 2 weeks.
I'm going to give you the name because I feel like
Please.
you're not going to get it.
I'm not gonna get it.
The film is Summersby.
Yeah, I was never gonna get that.
Richard Gere and Jodie Foster.
Yeah, I was never gonna get that.
You've also got Bill Pullman and James Earl Jones.
Weird.
Arlie Ernie is in it. But yeah, it's classic. Is it the real guy or is it an imposter?
Yeah. Yep.
Did you guys know that James Earl Jones did the voice of Darth Vader?
Get out of town. What are you fucking talking about? You're
Ben,
crazy.
what are you talking about?
I mean,
This
this
is
is
why
why
we
we
hired-
podcast, and I just thought
Ben.
if we're gonna, we should mention facts
Ben.
and trivia and stuff.
This is why we hired researchers, so we
Right.
don't just make wanton comments like that. That don't
Okay,
hold
actually,
up to
yeah, you're right. I
scrutiny.
should
We need to check
double
that,
check.
yeah.
And
We need to check that.
I'm right. Okay, so
I don't think
we're good to
you're
go.
Number 4 at the box office is a holdover from Oscar season. It's still hanging around. An indie hit that won an Academy Award. Yes, and was nominated for many more.
It won one.
Won.
Can you tell me what category?
Best Original Screenplay.
Best original screenplay. It's too early for Sling Blade.
It's far too early for Sling Blade. This
I know.
film,
I'm just trying to think of movies that have that kind of best original screenplay energy.
This film-
indie crossovers.
kind of, I think, launched the career of Harvey Weinstein, basically, as an Oscar powerhouse.
Is it
an
Crying Game?
Early Miramax success. It's The Crying Game.
Yeah.
Yep. And
That was a landmark one. Yeah.
absolutely. And then another, in number 5, another holdover from Christmas. It's an animated film.
Is it Beauty and the Beast?
Nope.
Aladdin?
It's Aladdin.
Got my years wrong. I was getting confused about this movie being shot in 92, released in 93.
That's right. Aladdin, number 5, 15 weeks in. It's made $179 million. It rules society, of course.
Yeah.
You've also
it was elected president of the United States, that movie.
Pretty much. Eva, do you have any takes on Summersby, The Crying Game, or Aladdin? I'm not even asking.
I don't like Aladdin.
Wow. Anti-Aladdin. And you don't like it at all, or you think it's overrated?
Overrated, yeah.
Yeah, I like it
you.
less than most. Yeah.
Too much Robin Williams. I don't like it.
I kind of am inclined to agree, but I still think he's maybe the best part of the movie.
Oh yeah, he is. But I think your episode about Aladdin was better than the movie Aladdin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like my horny energy was off the charts on that episode. I can't remember though. Number 6 at the box office is Army of Darkness. Number 7, Loaded Weapon 1. Emilio Estevez and Samuel L. Jackson.
Written, directed, and produced by producer Ben Hosley is what I'm seeing here on the IMDb.
Ben, have you seen or do you care about Loaded Weapon 1?
Financed?
I haven't seen it. I'm not familiar with these movies at all.
It was a National Lampoon spoof of Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, and they only ever made one, Ben. They just called the first one.
It's a joke about how they are always getting turned into sequels.
That's fun.
It's funny.
Yeah. Is it worth watching?
I don't think so. Nobody liked it.
Okay.
No, nobody liked it.
Right.
Yeah, it's like sub Hot Shots, right?
Yeah, Hot Shots is the better version of that.
Yeah. Right.
Or like Top Secret.
Top Secret's a good one.
When are they going to make Hot Shots Part Trey?
You think you want to call up Charlie Sheen right now? Really?
I think he's ready to go. He's never been better.
You've also got a couple more Oscar holdovers: Scent of a Woman, Howard's End. You've got Malcolm X. You've got the Waning Days of Muppet Christmas Carol, of course, and Untamed Heart, the Christian Slater, Marissa Tomei movie.
Orangutan Heart.
Untamed Heart.
But isn't that about him having an orangutan heart?
Does he have an orangutan heart? Yes, a baboon's heart.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or at least he claims that he has one. I don't know.
Is it a lie?
It might be a lie. I think it's apparently I'm reading the Wikipedia summary. It's a lie that a nun told him in an orphanage.
Jesus.
Who directed that? What's their series? Are you guys going to do
Tony Bill is the director of this movie.
Do you have time
Tony
for
Bill
a
is
mini-series?
strange.
A Tony Bill mini-series?
Tony Bill produced The Sting. So
right, he was
won
a big
an
producer.
Oscar.
Right.
And then he was like, but what I really want to do is direct. And all the movies he directed are strange.
Yeah,
the last movie he directed was Flyboys, which was the fighter pilot movie that was financed by the Ellisons because the one Ellison wanted to be a movie star and he was good at flying planes. The one who now finances half the movies in Hollywood, King of Skydance.
Yeah. He also made Untamed Heart. He also made My
Crazy
Bodyguard.
People. Yeah, Crazy People I feel like is a fully hated movie.
Okay.
With Daryl Hannah and Dudley Moore. Yeah.
He's in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Right. He was also a character actor.
Yeah, he's Terry. He's the guy that cut the mattress tag off. He's like that scary guy that ends up.
Oh,
he ends up with Simone.
Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah.
That's
his
him.
Career is so fucking strange.
Oh,
yeah. That's Tony Bell. Anyway, so that's Untamed Heart. So that's the weekend. That's it. It's a good weekend. I like it. It's a lot of weird stuff.
I do too. Yeah. I just want to shout out quickly because this is the first episode we've recorded since it happened. But one of our listeners has made a website called boxoffice.me. Box office game with the period in between GA and ME. That's like a Wordle style game where a new box office weekend goes up every night at midnight or 1 a.m. maybe Eastern time.
Yeah. That's really
and you have
cool.
to guess what the top 5 movies are. And it's for like a maximum 200 points per movie. But much like David giving me hints, you can like sacrifice points to get the name of an actor, or director, or genre, or whatever. It's very impressive, very addictive.
It's very cool how it's made, and Griff seems to be the best person in the world at it, but it is great.
What a surprise.
I played one round with no hints and I got just slaughtered. I was like, I didn't know you could get hints. I was like, I can never play this game. This game's impossible. But it's really impressive.
Yeah.
No, now I'm going to go back and do it with hints.
I didn't start sharing my scores until the second day I played, because the first day I did that and I fucking belly flopped and I got like 50 points.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of at least give me the tagline. Tagline usually will get me there.
You go for tagline, I go for genre. I find that if I have genre and distributor and they give you distributor for free, I usually figure it out.
That is how I usually start with you as well, I guess. So yeah, that makes some sense.
Okay, what's Wordle?
Oh, no.
Come on, Ben.
Oh, no, Ben.
Come on. You know about Wordle.
You know
Ben,
this.
you know about Wordle.
Yeah, I do.
Do you? I can't tell if you're bailing on a bit or you're pretending. You don't have to pretend that you love it, but do you know what it is?
It's really good. I always get a high score. Because I'm good at it.
Guys, we're done. My daughter's about to come home from daycare. I got to wrap this up. Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm looking at Ben's top Wordle guesses. Dirty, ditch,
holes, pitses,
pukes,
bones, armies.
Yeah.
He's good at Wordle. Eva, thank you so much for being on the show.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm such a fan of this podcast, and it's just I've been so excited about this for so long. So and you got me to do a cool movie too. I mean, I'm so happy.
I mean, you'll be back, but geez, I was very thrilled to learn that you listened to this podcast. I was sort of like, I can't believe it.
No,
yes.
we truly, anytime you are on one of the podcasts we listen to, Dave and I always go like, she's just the best. Like her episodes always are like standouts. And the second we heard that you liked the show, we were like, well, they're long overdue to get her on then. We just didn't want to ask because we were intimidated by you until you made it clear that you listened.
I do.
I just want to very quickly say, I give you credit for warping my brain in a bad way for being obsessed with trying to find the Moon Maid Dick Tracy book. But you said something on some pandemic episode of Doughboys that I'm not being hyperbolic here, is like the mantra I have kept in my head throughout these last 2 horrible years, and one of the few things that kind of kept me sane, where I think you were talking about baking and projects you had done when you were in lockdown, and Mitch was like shitting on himself for like not taking on a pandemic hobby or whatever. And you said I'm going to paraphrase here, but you said something to the effect of, the way you win the pandemic isn't by how well you use your time during the pandemic. The way you win the pandemic is making through it alive.
Oh.
And I was very similarly dealing with that. Like, I'm a piece of shit and other people are becoming more functional during this to distract themselves. And I have just like broken as a person. And it is a thing I repeated myself a lot of, just like, the only goal here is to stay alive and get through this fucking horrible, unprecedented thing in terms of modern history. So thank you truly from the bottom of my heart for saying that, because it gave me a lot of value.
Thank you for saying that, Griffin. That really means a lot. And you guys got me through a lot of pandemic just by being fun friends in my ears. So I appreciate
I always like to hear that. That always makes me feel nice. Yeah.
I also think it's just that our show's too long. I mean, people give us more credit for helping them get through the pandemic just because it takes less blank check episodes per day than most shows.
But you also, there's the project, you get to watch the movie, you get to like make a little day of it. It's just really, it feels communal, and it's lovely. So I appreciate you guys a lot.
Very kind of you to say. And I want to say thank you for your kind words, and thank you to our listeners. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media, Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork, Lane Montgomery, The Great American Novel, for our theme song, JJ Birch, Nick Loriano for our research, Alex Barron, AJ McCann for our editing. You can go to blankcheckpod.com with links to all the things connected to our podcast that I no longer have to call out individually. Over on Blank Check's special features, the Patreon account, patreon.com/blankcheck. We're doing The Matrix. We went back to The Matrix.
That's right.
That's a thing you can listen to if you
we're almost done with it. In fact, Matrix Resurrection is coming up.
It's coming up, and that's a wild one.
That's a riffy one.
Riffy, yeah. They call me Griffin, but David was riffing in that one. God, we have to fucking end this. Tune in next week for The Quick and the Dead.
Yep.
Yes.
Very exciting.
So good.
So I've never seen it. I'm very excited to watch it.
Russell Crowe is so hot in that movie. So
you
young,
gotta give
so
Sam
hot.
Raimi credit. He knows how to pick his hotties.
Yeah. Female gaze. But
Russell Crowe.
yes.
Make it Sam.
Russell Crowe in the 90s. Just my favorite. Biggest crush.
David
So
is
cute.
fanning himself.
He's got
as if
floppy
he's
hair.
Too sweaty.
He's covered in dirt. He's vulnerable.
I love him. I love the man.
David, bigger or smaller crush than Miss Honey?
Miss Honey's very specific. I think we go for Russell Crowe.
Ship
But,
them.
fair
you
enough.
know.
Ship them together.
Yeah, why not?
that's-
Why not?
that's
Fire
a
and
good
ice. Yeah,
Make
or
them
whatever.
kiss each
I don't
other.
know.
Smooch, smooch, smooch.
Kiss. All
Miss
right,
Honey,
all right.
6.7. Kiss, kiss, kiss.
Crow, Davidtz, Fire and Ice. I think that's a good pitch. That's like a fucking foreign film market pitch if I've ever heard it. And as always, I just think there's no more respectful way to finish off our Evil Dead trilogy than by saying groovy.
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 Okay, I don't want to call my shot in advance, but I'm proud of this one. I think this is a new angle.
A new angle.
I'm not gonna talk it up. I may put this at the end of the episode because I think I finally found a new angle 7 years in.
You're going to fall into the episode
Funny,
from the sky.
maybe it's not that new of an angle, but I think it's
Oh, okay.
it's different. It's different. It's not gonna work every time. It works for this one movie. Okay, ready?
Yeah.